The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through stars, planets, and the space between. For 200 years before the rise of the Empire, the Jedi Order stood at the height of its power during the Golden Age known as the High Republic, guardians of peace, explorers of the frontier, protectors of a republic that stretched across thousands of systems. The Jedi believed they understood the fundamental nature of reality itself. They believed the Force was the singular source of all cosmic power. They were wrong. The tear appeared without warning in the skies above Coruscant at 1347 hours, Republic Standard Time. Not a hyperspace anomaly. Not a spatial distortion. Reality itself ripped, and through that golden wound fell something that should not exist in this universe. Emergency klaxons wailed across the Senate district as atmospheric sensors registered energy readings that broke every known scale. Traffic lanes scattered as a humanoid figure plummeted through the clouds, trailing light like a dying star. Master Stellan Gios stood on the Jedi Temple's observation platform, his hand pressed against the stone balustrade as the Force screamed warnings through his mind. Beside him, Master Avar Kriss, the hero of Hetzel, stared upward with eyes that reflected the golden light bleeding across the sky. "What is that?" a Padawan whispered. "Not dark side," Avar murmured, her connection to the Force deeper than almost any living Jedi. "Not light either. It's nothing. Everything. It doesn't belong to the Force at all." The figure struck the Senate Plaza with enough force to crater permacrete 10 meters deep. The shockwave shattered windows for 3 kilometers in every direction. Rescue speeders converged immediately, but stopped at the crater's edge when the dust cleared. A man lay at the center of the impact zone, golden energy crackling across his skin like lightning frozen in amber. His suit was strange, blue and gold, nothing like Republic fashion, with a symbol blazoned across his chest that resembled a watchtower or tower of light. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow, and around him the very air seemed to shimmer and bend as if reality itself struggled to accommodate his presence. Robert Reynolds opened his eyes to an alien sky and felt the void stirring in the depths of his fractured mind, curious about this new universe, hungry to test its limits. "Please," he whispered to the beings gathering at the crater's edge, his voice carrying impossible distances without amplification. "Please. I just wanted to get away from it. I thought if I went far enough, it couldn't follow me." Master Stellan descended into the crater, his lightsaber unignited but ready at his belt. The Force gave him no guidance here, this stranger existed outside its sight, a blind spot in the cosmic tapestry. When Stellan extended his hand in peace, the gesture transcending language, Sentry looked at that outstretched hand and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. Behind them, in the shadows of the Senate district where no Jedi sensors reached, a figure in a dark cloak observed through a viewscreen, yellow eyes narrowing with interest. The rule of 2 had kept the Sith hidden for centuries, waiting for their moment. This golden intruder represented either a threat to their plans or the opportunity they had been waiting for. Either way, Darth Gravit's successor would be watching very, very closely. The High Republic was about to learn that some threats came not from the dark side, but from places where light and darkness meant nothing at all. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Sentry had torn through dimensional barriers for what felt like eternities, fleeing from a universe where everyone knew his name, knew his sins, knew about the void. In his reality, he was Robert Reynolds, former hero, current catastrophe, a man with the power of 1 million exploding suns who could barely control his own mind. He had destroyed cities while trying to save them. Killed allies when the void took control. The Avengers watched him with careful eyes. Reed Richards kept contingency plans locked in adamantium vaults. Even Thor, god of thunder, approached him with caution. So Sentry had run. Used his molecular manipulation to tear a hole between universes, diving through realities until he found one where the screaming in his head might finally stop. This galaxy felt different. Cleaner somehow. The energy that permeated everything here, this force, he could sense the locals discussing in fearful whispers, it flowed through living things with purpose and structure. So unlike the chaotic quantum field that birthed his power. For the first time in months, the void's whispers had quieted to a murmur. But that wouldn't last. It never did. "I am Master Stellan Gios of the Jedi Order," the bearded man said, his accent unfamiliar but his tone unmistakably diplomatic. "You've arrived on Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic. Can you tell me your name? Where you've come from?" Sentry sat up slowly, molecular reconstruction already healing the minor damage from his impact. Around the crater, Republic security forces had established a perimeter, their weapons trained on him with admirable discipline despite their obvious terror. He could feel their fear like heat against his skin, dozens of racing heartbeats, shallow breathing, fingers tight on triggers. He could kill them all with a thought. Rewrite their molecular structure into vapor. The void whispered that it would be easy, efficient, necessary even, to establish dominance immediately. "Robert," he said instead, his voice hoarse. "My name is Robert Reynolds. I was called Sentry. I came from very far away." He looked up at the impossible cityscape rising around them, towers that scraped the clouds, flying vehicles weaving between them in organized chaos, species he'd never seen walking alongside humans. "Farther than you can imagine." Master Avar Kriss descended into the crater, her presence somehow soothing despite Sentry's inability to sense her through conventional means. She moved with the confidence of someone who had faced danger countless times and emerged victorious. Her hand rested near her lightsaber, but the gesture seemed more habitual than threatening. "The Force brought you here for a reason," she said. "Nothing happens by accident in." "The Force didn't bring me," Sentry interrupted, meeting her eyes. "I tore through the walls between universes by myself. Your Force had nothing to do with it." The silence that followed was profound. Stellan and Avar exchanged glances, communicating in that wordless way partners develop. Sentry recognized it, he'd had that once with the Avengers, before the void ruined everything. "Impossible," Stellan said quietly. "The Force connects all living things. It is the fundamental energy of reality itself. Nothing exists outside its influence." Sentry stood, golden light flickering across his skin in patterns that hurt to watch directly. The permacrete beneath his feet cracked as his power fluctuated with his emotional state, a constant battle for control that exhausted him. "In my universe, we had gods. Actual gods. Cosmic entities older than galaxies. Reality warpers who could rewrite existence with a thought. The Force doesn't exist there. We have something else. Quantum fields. Cosmic radiation. Genetic mutations. Technology so advanced it looks like magic." He gestured to himself, and for a moment his form became translucent, revealing the swirling golden energy that comprised his being at the molecular level. "I was created in a laboratory accident. Drank a formula that moved my atoms out of phase with normal reality. Now I'm stuck like this, too much power, not enough control, and something dark living inside me that wants to hurt people." "The dark side," Avar breathed, her hand now gripping her lightsaber. "No," Sentry said, and his voice carried such weight that several security officers stepped back involuntarily. "Not your dark side. Something worse. We call it the Void, and it's the price I pay for all this power. It's me, but it's also not me. It's every terrible impulse, every violent thought, every moment of rage and fear given form and strength. When it takes control," he trailed off, memories of New York burning flashing through his mind. "When it takes control, people die. Lots of people." Stellan's comlink chirped urgently. A hologram flickered to life above his wrist, a Wookiee in Jedi robes, speaking in urgent growls. Stellan listened, his expression darkening. "The Council wants you brought to the temple immediately," Stellan said. "They've sensed something. A disturbance that began the moment you arrived. They believe you may be connected to prophecies about a coming darkness. Sentry laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not connected to your prophecies. I'm just a guy trying to escape his past. He looked around at the alien city, the strange beings, the impossible architecture. I thought maybe here, in a completely different universe, I could start over. Be normal. Let the void starve without anyone to hurt. Nothing is normal about power like yours, Avar said gently. But that doesn't mean you have to face it alone. The Jedi have helped countless beings master their abilities, overcome their darkness. Whatever this void is, we can help you control it. The golden light around Sentry flickered, dimming slightly. Deep in his psyche, Robert Reynolds, the man who just wanted peace, desperately wanted to believe her. But the void, sensing weakness, stirred from its slumber and whispered a single question that chilled him to his core. What happens when they realize they can't help you? What happens when they try to cage you like all the others? What happens when we show them that gods don't kneel to monks with laser swords? Sentry looked at the two Jedi Masters, at their earnest faces and honest intentions, and felt something break inside. They had no idea what they were dealing with. No conception of the catastrophe standing before them. But they would learn. Everyone always did. Okay, he said quietly. Take me to your council. But I'm warning you now, if the void comes out, if I lose control even for a second, you need to run. Don't try to fight me. Don't try to save me. Just run and hope it's enough. As Republic security speeders surrounded the crater and Jedi reinforcements arrived, none of them noticed the holographic recorder hidden in a nearby building's shadow, transmitting everything to a darkened chamber where yellow eyes watched with growing fascination. The Sith had waited centuries for an opportunity to destroy the Jedi Order. They had never imagined that opportunity might fall from the sky. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant rose like a mountain of geometrically perfect stone, its 5 spires reaching toward the sky in a configuration ancient beyond memory. Inside the council chamber at the temple's highest point, 12 masters sat in a circle of chairs, their expressions ranging from curiosity to deep concern as Master Stellan Gios delivered his report. Sentry stood at the chamber's center, acutely aware of every pair of eyes studying him. The circular room's windows offered a panoramic view of Coruscant's endless cityscape, billions of lives spread across thousands of levels, all of them fragile, all of them vulnerable if the void decided to wake up hungry. He kept his power dampened as much as possible, but even restrained, golden light leaked from his skin like radiation, casting strange shadows that moved independent of any light source. Master Yoda sat forward in his chair, his ancient eyes fixed on Sentry with an intensity that suggested he saw far more than physical form. The diminutive Jedi Master was nearly 600 years old, and his presence in the Force was like standing near a sun, vast, warm, and utterly confident. Interesting, this is, Yoda said, his ears twitching with curiosity. Through the Force, see you I cannot. A void you are. A blank space where a living being should be. He paused, his gaze sharpening. Or perhaps, two beings occupying one space. Sentry's jaw tightened. The old master was more perceptive than he'd hoped. You could say that. I told your people, there's something else inside me. Something dark. I came here hoping the distance might weaken it, but, he gestured helplessly. I don't think distance works the way I hoped it would. Master Avar Kriss stood near the window, her connection to the Force so refined she could sense the emotional states of every being in the temple simultaneously, a technique she called hearing, the song of the Force. Right now, that song was disrupted, discordant, as if someone had introduced an instrument that played notes outside the known scale. Tell us about your powers, requested Master Adampo, a Volpterine whose long snout twitched as he spoke. Our sensors registered your arrival with readings equivalent to a capital ship's reactor breaching containment. Yet you survived impact without visible injury. What are you? Enhanced, Sentry said carefully. In my universe, a scientist created a formula meant to phase matter into another dimension. I volunteered for the experiment. Something went wrong. The formula gave me access to energy that exists between the spaces of normal reality. Power without limits. He raised his hand, and golden light danced between his fingers. I can manipulate matter at the molecular level. Fly faster than light. Project energy that can vaporize starship hulls. Regenerate from almost any injury. I've fought beings you'd call gods and survived. Boasting, that sounds like, Yoda observed mildly. It's not boasting if it's true, Sentry replied, and there was no pride in his voice, only exhausted resignation. I've lifted buildings. Fought planet-destroying threats. Stood toe-to-toe with the strongest beings in my reality. And every single time, I've been terrified that the void would take over and turn all that power against everyone I was trying to protect. Master Stellan stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts recognizing the pain beneath Sentry's words. This void you speak of, is it a separate entity? A parasite of some kind? Both and neither, Sentry said, and his form flickered for a moment, the golden glow dimming to reveal something darker underneath before he reasserted control. The void is me. My shadow. Every dark impulse I've ever suppressed, every violent thought, every moment of rage and fear, the formula that gave me power also split my psyche. Robert Reynolds, the man who wanted to help people, and the void, the monster who wants to prove he's the strongest thing in existence by destroying everything that challenges him. The council chamber fell silent. Several masters exchanged concerned glances through the Force, their telepathic communion excluding Sentry entirely, another reminder that he existed outside the fundamental energy of this universe. Master Yariel Poof, whose long neck allowed him to observe Sentry from multiple angles simultaneously, spoke with the measured tone of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. We have encountered beings with split personalities before. Darksiders consumed by rage, individuals possessed by Sith spirits, even Force-sensitive criminals with multiple identities. In every case, the Force provided guidance. Meditation, healing trances, even surgical Force techniques to repair damaged psyches. He paused. But you exist outside the Force entirely. Our traditional methods would be ineffective. I know, Sentry said. In my universe, the greatest minds tried everything. Therapy. Medication. Technology designed to suppress my powers. Neural inhibitors. Even magic, yes, we have magic there too. Nothing worked. The void is part of me at a level deeper than thought or consciousness. It's written into my molecular structure. Master Avar approached him slowly, her hand extended in a gesture of peace. May I? When Sentry nodded warily, she placed her palm near his chest, not touching, but close enough that in a normal being, she would feel the warmth of their presence in the Force. Instead, she felt nothing. Absolute emptiness, as if he were a hole cut out of reality itself. How lonely you must be, she whispered. To exist in a universe of connection and feel none of it. The observation struck Sentry harder than any physical blow. His golden aura flared involuntarily, bright enough that several masters shielded their eyes. For just a moment, the windows behind him cracked from the pressure of his emotional response, grief and isolation bleeding into physical force. I'm sorry, he said quickly, reasserting control as molecular manipulation sealed the cracks in the transparisteel. I'm sorry. That's what I mean. My emotions affect my power. When I'm calm, I can control it. When I'm stressed, afraid, angry, the void gets stronger. And in my experience, people trying to help me usually ends with them realizing I'm too dangerous to exist. Yoda hopped down from his chair, his jimmer stick tapping against the polished floor as he approached. Despite his small stature, his presence filled the room. Fear you, we do not, he said firmly. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. This, the Jedi know well. He looked up at Sentry with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. But wisdom requires caution. Power like yours, unchecked, a threat to billions it could be. I know, Sentry said. That's why I left my universe. As long as I'm here, they're safe. As long as I stay away from populated areas, keep moving, never settle down, maybe the void will have nothing to destroy. A half-life, that is, Yoda said sadly. Existence without purpose. Survival without meaning. Is that truly what you seek? Before Sentry could answer, the council chamber's doors burst open. A young Jedi Knight stumbled in, her face pale with terror and her robe singed. Masters. The Senate District, there's been an incident. A researcher at the Republic Science Institute attempted to scan the arrival site with deep-spectrum sensors. The readings they captured, she stopped, struggling for words. They brought the data crystals to their laboratory for analysis. When they activated the spectral reconstruction protocols, something happened to the lead scientist. She started screaming about darkness and the nothing that hungers, and then the knight's voice broke. She tore apart her own laboratory with her bare hands. Ripped through durasteel like it was paper. Killed 3 colleagues before security put her down. Just before she died, she said, the knight looked directly at Sentry. She said, it's already here. The Golden God brought the void with him. The temperature in the council chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sentry's golden aura dimmed to almost nothing as horror spread across his face. No, he whispered. No, I was careful. I didn't let it out. I didn't. But deep in his mind, the void laughed, and Sentry understood with sickening clarity what had happened. The researcher hadn't scanned his arrival. She'd scanned his energy signature, the unique quantum frequency that defined his existence. And when the laboratory equipment reconstructed that frequency for analysis, it had created a sympathetic resonance. A bridge. The void had reached through that bridge and touched her mind, just for a moment. Just long enough to show her what waited in the depths of Sentry's psyche. And that glimpse had driven her mad. Master Stellan's hand moved to his lightsaber. Around the circle, other masters tensed, their diplomatic masks slipping to reveal the warriors underneath. Avar's song of the Force turned discordant as fear rippled through the temple, hundreds of Jedi sensing danger, preparing for conflict. I didn't mean for that to happen, Sentry said, backing toward the windows. I swear, I didn't know studying my energy could. Contain yourself, you must, Yoda commanded, but there was urgency in his tone now, not just wisdom. Meditate. Focus. Let the darkness drain away. I can't meditate your darkness away. Sentry shouted, and the windows behind him shattered outward, glass raining down on the cityscape below. The void isn't something you can just wish into submission. It's hunger. It's hate. It's the fundamental truth that power exists to be used, and everything else is just prey waiting to be consumed. His eyes flickered, golden to black and back again, too fast to track. The void was waking up, curious about this new universe, testing the boundaries of Robert Reynolds' control. Master Yariel Poof stepped forward, his four-fingered hands raised in a placating gesture. Then leave Coruscant. Go to an uninhabited system where no one can be harmed. We will send supplies, resources. Find a way to help you in isolation until... Until what? Sentry demanded. Until you figure out how to kill me? Until you build some force prison to lock me away forever? I've been down this road before. Quarantine. Observation. Study. It always ends the same way, with me breaking free and people dying because they pushed too hard, dug too deep, tried to weaponize what I am. The golden light around him intensified, pushing against the council chamber's walls like a physical force. Several masters ignited their lightsabers, blue, green, and purple blades humming to life in defensive stances. Please, Master Avar said, her voice cutting through the tension like a bell. We are not your enemies. We want to help. But you must give us time to understand what you are, what threatens you. Will you accept our offer of sanctuary on an isolated world? Not as a prison, but as a refuge. Sentry looked at her, at the genuine compassion in her eyes, and felt Robert Reynolds clawing back control from the void's rising tide. She meant it. They wanted to help. But he'd seen this pattern too many times. Help always became containment. Containment always became conflict. And conflict with Sentry always ended in mass casualties. I'll go, he said quietly, the golden light dimming as he wrestled his power back under control. I'll go to your isolated world. But I'm telling you now, if anyone tries to study me, tries to replicate my power, tries to turn me into a weapon, the void will kill them. Not might. Will. And I won't be able to stop it. Yoda nodded slowly, his expression grave. Understood, your warning is. But hope, the Jedi way is. Where others see only darkness, light we will seek. Where others see only danger, possibility we will find. He turned to Master Stellan. Arrange transport to the Dalnan sector. Uninhabited, that region is. Safe for our guest to adjust. As the council began making arrangements, Sentry moved to the shattered window and looked out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. Trillions of lives spread out before him, all of them blissfully unaware that an extinction-level threat had just arrived in their universe. In the shadows at the chamber's edge, unseen by Jedi or visitor alike, a small probe droid no larger than a fist recorded everything through Sith-designed cloaking fields. The figure watching through its feed smiled in the darkness, yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. The Jedi wanted to help their golden intruder find peace. How adorably naive. The Sith would offer something far more valuable, acceptance of the darkness within, and the power that came from embracing it fully. But first, let the Jedi try their methods. Let them fail. Let them drive Sentry toward the only philosophy that truly understood what he was. After all, the Sith had been patient for centuries. They could wait a little longer. The transport ship Luminous Endeavor cut through hyperspace toward the Dalnan sector, its hull gleaming white and gold in the characteristic High Republic aesthetic, elegant, optimistic, a physical manifestation of the Republic's Golden Age philosophy. Sentry sat alone in the passenger hold, his hands pressed against the viewport as blue-white hyperspace streams flowed past like rivers of frozen light. Master Stellan Geos occupied the pilot's seat, though a competent droid could have handled the journey. The Jedi Master had insisted on personally escorting their guest, partially from diplomatic duty, partially from something deeper, curiosity about a being who existed outside the Force's influence, and concern about what might happen if that being lost control mid-flight. They had been traveling for 6 hours. 6 hours of silence broken only by the hyperdrive's steady hum and Sentry's occasional whispered arguments with himself, or perhaps with the void. Stellan couldn't tell, and that uncertainty troubled him more than he'd admit. In my universe, Sentry said suddenly, startling Stellan from his meditation, there's a prison called the Raft. Maximum security facility built specifically for enhanced individuals like me. Adamantium walls. Psionic dampeners. Guard robots designed to kill in milliseconds if containment fails. He pressed his forehead against the cool transparent steel. I've been there 3 times. Twice voluntarily, once by force. Never lasted more than a month before something went wrong. Stellan turned in his seat, studying the golden-skinned man whose power readings had required the ship's sensors to be recalibrated twice. What went wrong? The void got bored, Sentry said simply. Containment is predicated on the idea that something wants to stay contained. The void doesn't. It waits until Robert Reynolds is asleep, or distracted, or just too tired to fight anymore. Then it tears through whatever cage they've built and reminds everyone why gods don't belong in boxes. He turned from the window, his eyes reflecting the hyperspace glow with an eerie intensity. Is that what this is? A prettier version of the Raft? Exile dressed up as sanctuary? No, Stellan said firmly. The Jedi do not imprison people for what they might do. We offer guidance, training, support. The planet Wevo, where we're taking you, it's truly uninhabited. An agricultural world abandoned 2 decades ago when blight destroyed its crops. The Republic quarantined it, but the ecosystem has recovered naturally. Clean water. Edible vegetation. Shelter from old settlements. He paused. And most importantly, no one to hurt if you lose control. Except you, Sentry observed. You'll be checking on me. Monitoring. Studying. How long before sanctuary becomes observation, becomes experimentation? Stellan met his gaze evenly. I won't lie to you, Robert. The Council wants to understand what you are. Not to weaponize you, the Jedi don't work that way. But because understanding is how we help. If we can comprehend the nature of your power, the mechanics of this void, perhaps we can find a solution your universe's scientists missed. They didn't miss anything, Sentry said bitterly. Reed Richards is the smartest human on my Earth. He studied me for months. Built machines that could map my quantum signature down to the subatomic level. You know what he concluded? Sentry's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That I shouldn't exist. That the energy comprising my being violates several fundamental laws of physics. That I'm essentially a walking impossibility held together by sheer force of will. And when that will falters. The ship shuddered. Red warning lights flashed across the cockpit console as proximity alarms wailed. Stellan's hands flew across the controls, pulling them out of hyperspace with practiced efficiency. The blue-white tunnel collapsed into real space, revealing a scene that made both passengers' blood run cold. They had emerged in the Dalnan sector as planned. But Wevo wasn't the peaceful, abandoned world the Republic records promised. 3 massive starships hung in low orbit, sleek, predatory vessels painted in the crimson and black of the Nihil marauders. The largest bore the symbol of the Tempest, Marchion Ro's personal fleet. And on Wevo's surface, fires burned across what should have been empty settlements. Explosions bloomed like orange flowers against the green-brown terrain. Impossible, Stellan breathed, his hand already reaching for the communications array. This sector was supposed to be clear. The Nihil haven't operated this far forward in months. What are the Nihil? Sentry asked, his voice hardening as he watched explosions tear through structures below. Pirates. Marauders. They strike Republic shipping lanes and frontier settlements using paths through hyperspace no one else can navigate. Violent, unpredictable, and led by a man called Marchion Ro, the Eye of the Nihil. Stellan's fingers danced across the controls, attempting to send a distress signal back to Coruscant. They've been the Republic's primary security threat for the past 2 years. The communications console erupted in sparks. Stellan jerked back, shaking his burned hand. They're jamming us. We can't send for help. Are there people down there? Sentry asked, his eyes fixed on the planet below. On the surface? There shouldn't be, Stellan said, pulling up sensor readings with his uninjured hand. But I'm detecting life signs. Dozens of them. Settlers maybe, or scientists who moved back after the quarantine lifted. Caught in the crossfire. Another explosion bloomed on the surface, larger this time, consuming an entire settlement block. Even from orbit, they could see structures collapsing, vehicles scattered like toys, tiny figures running through streets that had become kill zones. Sentry's hands pressed against the viewport, his breath fogging the transparisteel. In his mind, the void stirred like a predator scenting blood. They're hurting people, Robert Reynolds thought. Innocent people who can't defend themselves. Their prey, the void whispered back. Weak things being culled by stronger things. The natural order. Why should we care? Because we're not animals. We're better than. Better? The void's laughter echoed through Sentry's psyche like breaking glass. We're a god among insects. Their pain is irrelevant. Their lives are irrelevant. Only power matters. Only strength. I need to go down there, Sentry said aloud. Stellan turned sharply. Absolutely not. We're outnumbered and outgunned. The smart move is to retreat, get past their jamming range, and call for Jedi reinforcements from. People are dying now, Sentry interrupted, and golden light began leaking from his skin like liquid sunlight. While we retreat and call for help and go through proper channels, those people down there are being slaughtered. I can stop it. I can stop it right now. You said yourself you're dangerous when you lose control, Stellan argued, but even as he spoke, another explosion tore through the settlement below. If the void takes over during combat, then I'll take it away from the civilians first, Sentry said, moving toward the airlock. I'll draw the Nihil's attention, lead them away from the populated areas. You get down there, evacuate whoever you can in the chaos. Get them off-world before. The ship rocked violently as turbolaser fire streaked past their bow. The Nihil had noticed them. One of the corvettes was breaking orbit, weapons charging for another salvo. They're targeting us, Stellan said unnecessarily, his Jedi training taking over as he jerked the luminous Endeavor into evasive maneuvers. The transport ship wasn't built for combat, it had minimal shields and no weapons. Another hit like that would cripple them. Sentry placed his hand against the airlock controls. I'm going out there. I'm going to stop this. You'll die in the vacuum, Stellan shouted over the alarm klaxons. Even with your powers, space is. I've survived in vacuum before, Sentry said calmly. The golden light around him intensified until it hurt to look at directly. I've flown through stars. Crossed solar systems under my own power. The void of space is just another environment. He paused at the airlock threshold, looking back at the Jedi Master. Your people wanted to help me find peace. Maybe this is it. Maybe if I use this power to save lives instead of taking them, the void will quiet down. Maybe I can prove I'm more than just a weapon. Stellan saw the desperate hope in Sentry's eyes, the need to believe he could be a hero instead of a monster. It was a look he'd seen in countless Padawans struggling with their darker impulses, seeking redemption through action. Go, Stellan said, making a decision that would haunt him for years. Save them. But Robert, don't let the void win. Whatever happens down there, come back as yourself. Promise me. Sentry's smile was sad and knowing. I'll try. That's the best I can do. He opened the airlock, and space rushed in with silent violence. The atmosphere vented in an explosive whoosh, but Sentry didn't seem to notice. Golden energy enveloped him completely, forming an aura that pushed back the vacuum like a physical barrier. He stepped out into the void between ship and planet, and for a moment hung suspended in space like a tiny golden star. Then he dove toward Wevo like a meteor wrapped in light. Stellan watched through the viewport as Sentry accelerated to impossible speeds, leaving a golden contrail across the black. The Nihil corvette that had been targeting the luminous Endeavor suddenly had a different problem. A humanoid projectile moving faster than their targeting computers could track, radiating energy signatures that made their sensors scream warnings. Sentry hit the corvette's forward hull at near-relativistic speed. The impact should have killed him instantly. Instead, it punched a hole clean through the ship's armor plating, through interior bulkheads, through the reactor shielding, and out the other side. Secondary explosions rippled across the corvette's length as containment fields failed and fuel lines ruptured. The massive ship broke apart in slow motion, pieces tumbling away in different trajectories, atmosphere venting in crystalline plumes. Escape pods launched desperately from the dying vessel, but Sentry was already gone, a golden streak diving toward the planet's surface where more people were dying. Stellan stood alone in the damaged cockpit, his hand still extended toward where Sentry had been, and felt fear coil in his chest. Not fear for the Nihil. Fear for what he'd just unleashed. Because in that moment of impact, for just a fraction of a second, Sentry's eyes had turned black. And the expression on his face hadn't been heroic determination. It had been joy. On the planet's surface, in what remained of New Dalnan settlement, a young Twi'lek mother named Sula held her daughter close as Nihil raiders kicked down their shelter door. The marauders wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that crackled with jury-rigged modifications. Their leader, a scarred Weequay with cruel eyes, leveled a blaster at Sula's head. "Credits or blood," he growled in Basic. "Your choice." 10 seconds. Sula clutched her daughter tighter, her leku trembling with terror. They'd come to Wevo because the Republic promised it was safe, cheap land for settlers willing to brave a recovering ecosystem. The Nihil weren't supposed to be here. No one was supposed to be here. "Please," she whispered. "We don't have." The Weequay never finished listening to her plea. Golden light filled the doorway, so bright it burned afterimages into Sula's vision. When her eyes adjusted, she saw something that would fuel nightmares and prayers in equal measure for the rest of her life. A man hung suspended in the air, wreathed in light that seemed to come from within his very skin. His eyes glowed with power that had nothing to do with the blasters and crude technology of the Nihil. He looked at the raiders the way a human might look at insects, curious, detached, and fundamentally unbothered by their weapons. "Drop your guns and run," Sentry said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to vibrate in the bones. "You have 5 seconds. I'm feeling generous." The scarred Weequay laughed and opened fire. His entire gang followed suit, a dozen blasters unleashing concentrated plasma at point-blank range. The bolts struck Sentry's golden aura and simply stopped, hanging frozen in the air like insects trapped in amber. Sentry looked at the suspended energy, tilted his head thoughtfully, then flicked his wrist. The blaster bolts reversed course. The Nihil gang had exactly enough time to look surprised before their own weapons' fire struck them. They dropped, stunned by bolts set to non-lethal settings. Sentry had adjusted the energy yield molecularly mid-flight, preventing deaths while ensuring the raiders wouldn't be getting up anytime soon. But as Sentry moved through the settlement, neutralizing marauders with surgical precision, something began to change. Each fight lasted seconds. Each enemy fell without mounting meaningful resistance. And with each effortless victory, the void's whispers grew louder. "Too easy. They're nothing. Make them suffer. Show them what real power looks like." "No," Sentry muttered, restraining another Nihil with molecular bonds. "I'm here to save people, not save them." The void laughed. "Look at these ants scurrying in fear. They don't need saving. They need culling. They need to understand their place in the hierarchy of power." Sentry's eyes flickered, gold to black, back to gold, the transitions coming faster now. The restraint he'd been showing began to slip. A Nihil sniper fired from a rooftop. Sentry's response wasn't to disable him. It was to vaporize the entire building. The structure exploded into molecular vapor, stone and metal and flesh breaking down into constituent atoms in an instant. When the golden light faded, nothing remained but a crater where the building had stood. Sula, watching from her shelter with growing horror, clutched her daughter closer. The golden man had saved them. But the way he destroyed that building, the casual, effortless annihilation, that wasn't heroism. That was something much, much worse. Marchion Ro stood aboard the bridge of his flagship Gaze Electric, observing the carnage through floor-to-ceiling viewports with the detached interest of a scientist studying an experiment. The eye of the Nihil was a man who understood power, not just the crude force of weapons and numbers, but the subtle power of information, leverage, and fear. His control over the Nihil wasn't maintained through brute strength but through possession of the paths, hyperspace routes only he could navigate, making him indispensable. Now he watched something that challenged his understanding of power entirely. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding below. The viewscreen zoomed in on the settlement where a golden figure moved through Nihil forces like a force storm given humanoid form. Raiders fell by the dozens, their weapons useless, their armor irrelevant. Buildings exploded into atomic vapor. Vehicles crumpled like paper. In less than 5 minutes, this single individual had inflicted more casualties than a full Jedi strike team. Jedi? Asked Pan Ida, the massive Dauyutan who led the Tempest Runner Council. His thick fingers gripped the railing hard enough to dent the metal. No, Marchion said thoughtfully. Jedi don't fight like that. Too efficient. Too brutal. And look, no lightsaber. No apparent connection to the Force at all. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Our scouts reported a Republic transport entering the system. Single passenger beyond the Jedi pilot. This must be him. Then we kill him, Pan Ida growled. Drop orbital fire on his position. Vaporize the entire settlement if we have to. No, Marchion said sharply. Don't you see? This being just destroyed a Corvette with his bare hands. Survived vacuum exposure. Demonstrates power beyond anything we've encountered. A thin smile crossed his face. The Republic brought him here for isolation. Why? Because they fear him. Because they can't control him. He turned from the viewport. We don't kill opportunities like this. We recruit them. Pan Ida snorted. He's killing our people by the dozen. You think he'll just... He's killing soldiers who attack civilians, Marchion interrupted. Watch carefully. Despite his power, he's restraining himself. Most of those raiders are unconscious, not dead. He's trying to be a hero. The contempt in Martian's voice was palpable. Heroes are easy to manipulate. You just have to show them a cause worth fighting for. On the surface, Sentry finished disabling the last group of Nihil in the eastern settlement block. 37 raiders lay unconscious or molecularly bound, their weapons scattered. The few civilians who'd witnessed his intervention huddled in doorways, torn between gratitude and terror. The void screamed in his mind with increasing fury. You're holding back. They attacked innocents. They deserve extinction, not mercy. They deserve justice, Sentry muttered, his hands trembling as golden light flickered erratically across his skin. Justice, not execution. There's a difference. Justice is a fiction weak beings invented to pretend their suffering matters. We could end this entire pirate fleet in seconds. Burn those ships from orbit. Show this galaxy what real power looks like. No, Sentry said, louder now. Several nearby civilians flinched at the sound. I won't. I won't be that thing. Not here. Not again. He took off vertically, golden contrail marking his ascent as he flew toward the next settlement under attack. Below, Sula emerged from her shelter and stared at the sky where the golden man had vanished. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve. Mama, was that an angel? Sula thought about the building that had been vaporized. The casual, terrible ease of that destruction. I don't know, sweetling. I don't know what that was. Master Stellan Geos brought the luminous Endeavor down in a clearing 3 kilometers from New Dalnan settlement, using the Nihil jamming as cover for his approach. The moment the landing ramp extended, he was moving, lightsaber in hand, Jedi robes flowing as he sprinted toward the sounds of combat. The Force guided his steps through terrain transformed into a war zone. Burned out vehicles. Scorched earth where buildings once stood. Bodies, Nihil raiders, mostly, though the occasional civilian casualty made his heart clench. And everywhere, the lingering scent of ozone and ionized particles that suggested massive energy discharge. He found Sentry hovering above the central settlement square, surrounded by a dozen Nihil cloud ships, fast-moving atmospheric craft bristling with weapons. They circled him like predators testing prey, firing constantly. Blaster bolts, missiles, even crude plasma cannons. Nothing touched him. Sentry hung motionless in the air, his golden aura absorbing every impact without visible effort. His eyes were closed, his face twisted in concentration, or perhaps internal struggle. When he finally moved, it was with frightening precision. He pointed at the nearest cloud ship. Golden light lanced out, not an energy beam, but something more fundamental. Molecular manipulation at range. The cloud ship's hull simply came apart, component metals separating back into constituent elements. The craft didn't explode. It dissipated, and the pilot fell screaming toward the ground until Sentry caught him with a gesture, lowering the Nihil raider gently to the ground. Surrender, Sentry's voice boomed across the settlement, amplified through manipulation of air molecules. Drop your weapons. Flee. I don't want to kill you. The Nihil responded with intensified fire. Rocket launchers. Thermal detonators. One desperate raider even rammed his cloud ship directly into Sentry. The vehicle crumpled against his aura like tin foil. The pilot never had a chance to scream. One moment he existed, the next he was molecular vapor. Stellan saw Sentry's eyes snap open, pure black now, no gold remaining. His expression shifted from focused restraint to something far worse, amusement. No more mercy, the void said with Sentry's voice, but the tone was wrong, too flat, too cold, entirely without human warmth. You had your chance. Now I'll show you what happens when gods stop pretending to be mortal. The massacre began. Sentry, no, the void wearing his face, moved through the remaining cloud ships like a scythe through wheat. No more restraint. No more non-lethal takedowns. Craft exploded into fire and shrapnel. Raiders died screaming as molecular manipulation turned their bodies inside out. The void laughed as it worked, a sound like breaking glass echoing across the settlement. Robert. Stellan shouted, igniting his lightsaber and running toward the carnage. Robert Reynolds. Fight it. Take back control. The void turned, and its black eyes fixed on Stellan with predatory interest. The monk with the laser sword. I wondered when you'd arrive. It descended slowly, touching down 20 meters from Stellan with impacts that cracked permacrete. Robert is sleeping. He got tired. Let me out to play. Do you want to play, little Jedi? Stellan fell into a defensive stance, his blue blade humming. The Force screamed danger, but provided no guidance on how to counter a threat that existed outside its influence. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to help Robert. Robert doesn't want help, the void said, and black tendrils of anti-light began leaking from its skin, inverse energy that seemed to eat photons. Robert wants to be left alone. To hide. To pretend he's normal. But I know the truth. We're not normal. We're superior. And this galaxy, it spread its arms wide, encompassing sky and settlement and the Nihil ship still in orbit. This galaxy needs to learn what happens when something stronger arrives. It moved. Stellan barely registered the motion before the void was in front of him, one hand casually swatting his lightsaber aside. The plasma blade struck golden skin and simply stopped, matter manipulation preventing the contained energy from cutting. The void's other hand gripped Stellan's throat and lifted him effortlessly. You Jedi are interesting, the void mused, studying Stellan like a specimen. I can't sense your force. Robert explained, it's the energy of this universe, and we're from somewhere else. But I can sense your fear. Your determination. Your idiotic hope that talking will somehow fix this. Its grip tightened. Nothing fixes this. Nothing stops me except Robert's pathetic conscience, and he's too weak to. I'm not weak. The voice came from the void's mouth, but the tone changed, less predatory, more anguished. The black eyes flickered, gold bleeding through for a moment. The grip on Stellan's throat loosened slightly. Robert? Stellan gasped. I'm trying. Sentry's face twisted in agony as two personalities warred for control of one body. The void, it got loose when I killed that pilot. Accident. Didn't mean to. But then it felt good to stop holding back and oh. The golden aura surged, pushing back the black tendrils. Sentry dropped Stellan and staggered backward, his hands clutching his head. Get away from me. Get everyone away. I can't hold it much longer. A shadow fell across them both. Stellan looked up to see a Nihil transport descending, not a combat vessel but a diplomatic craft, painted in the eye's personal colors. The boarding ramp lowered, and Marchion Ro descended with measured steps, flanked by 2 guards. Fascinating, Marchion said, studying Sentry's internal struggle with clinical interest. A being of pure power torn between creation and destruction. Hero and monster sharing one flesh. He stopped 10 meters away, well out of physical range but close enough to speak conversationally. I am Marchion Ro, Eye of the Nihil. And I have a proposition for you, Robert Reynolds. Get away, Sentry ground out, his voice shifting between registers as control seesawed between personalities. Can't promise your safety. I'm not here to fight, Marchion said calmly. I'm here to offer you what the Jedi never can, acceptance of what you are. He gestured to the devastation around them. Look at what you've done. Saved civilians, yes. But also killed my people. Destroyed property. Inflicted massive casualties. The Jedi will call this a tragedy. A failure of control. They'll want to lock you away, study you, fix you. He stepped closer, ignoring Stellan's warning shout. But I see something else. I see a weapon that could reshape this galaxy. And I'm offering you the freedom to use that power without guilt, without restraint, without weak-minded fools telling you to hold back. Don't listen to him, Stellan said, climbing to his feet. He's manipulating you. The Nihil destroy for profit and pleasure. That's not heroism. That's honesty, Marchion interrupted. We don't pretend to be saviors. We take what we want and leave the philosophical hand-wringing to others. His eyes fixed on Sentry. Join me. Let the void free. Together we could control not just the frontier, but the entire Republic. No force in the galaxy could stand against us. And you'd never have to pretend to be less than you are. The black tendrils around Sentry intensified. The void was listening. Considering. Yes, it hissed through Sentry's mouth. Yes. Finally, someone who understands. Power should be free. Used. Celebrated. Not caged by weaklings who. Robert. Stellan shouted, and poured every ounce of conviction into the Force, projecting not compulsion, that wouldn't work, but pure emotional resonance. Images of the civilian Sentry had saved. The mother and daughter huddling in their shelter. The pilot he gently lowered to safety before the void took over. You came here to escape this. To be better. Don't let him twist your pain into his weapon. Sentry's eyes flickered, black to gold, back to black, the battle visible on his face. His hands trembled. Blood ran from his nose as the strain of internal conflict manifested physically. He looked at Marchion. Then at Stellan. Then at the burning settlement around them. I don't know what I am anymore. Then let me show you, Marchion said, extending his hand. Come with me. Learn what the Nihil can offer. If you don't like it, you can leave. No prison. No judgment. Just honest appraisal of your capabilities and how to use them effectively. He's lying, Stellan said urgently. The Nihil don't let anyone leave. They'll use you until you're no longer useful, then. An explosion cut him off. One of the Nihil ships in orbit, the damaged corvette Sentry had punctured, finally lost containment. It detonated in a fireball visible even in daylight, debris raining down on the settlement's outskirts. Sentry looked up at the destruction he'd caused, at the lives ended by his hand, and something broke inside him. The golden light dimmed. The black tendrils retracted. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I need time. To think. To figure out. He looked at both men, pirate and Jedi, predator and protector. You both want to use me. Just in different ways. But nobody asks what I want. He took off vertically, accelerating so fast he broke the sound barrier within seconds. Golden contrail marked his passage as he flew toward the horizon, leaving both Marchion and Stellan standing in the wreckage. Marchion watched him go with a satisfied smile. He'll be back. They always come back. And when he does, he'll be ours. Never, Stellan said, gripping his lightsaber. The Jedi will find him first. Help him. Give him the peace he's seeking. Peace. Marchion laughed. There is no peace for beings like him. Only the illusion of control before the inevitable collapse. But believe what you need to, Jedi. I'll be waiting for when reality proves you wrong. He returned to his transport, leaving Stellan alone in the burning settlement, surrounded by the wounded and the dead, wondering how badly he'd failed, and what would happen when Sentry finally made his choice. 3 days after the Wevo incident, the Jedi Council reconvened in emergency session. The circular chamber felt smaller now, oppressive with the weight of decisions gone wrong. Master Stellan Gios stood at the center, his robes still stained with ash, his report delivered in the flat tone of someone who'd witnessed a nightmare and couldn't quite believe it was real. 47 Nihil raiders dead, he concluded. 12 civilians killed in crossfire. 3 settlements reduced to rubble. And Sentry, Robert Reynolds, currently missing, last seen heading toward the outer rim at speeds our tracking systems couldn't follow. He paused, meeting Yoda's ancient gaze. I failed. I pushed him into combat before we understood what he was capable of. Before we understood what the void truly represented. Master Avar Kriss stood near the window, her connection to the Force's song, telling her things the official reports couldn't. The disturbance in the Force hasn't faded. It's spreading. Like ripples in water, but the water is reality itself. Whatever Sentry is, his presence is affecting the fundamental nature of this galaxy. Not affecting, corrected Master Yariel Poof, his long neck allowing him to observe tactical displays from multiple angles. Corrupting. Our Force-sensitive scouts in nearby sectors report nightmares. Visions of darkness that isn't the dark side, something other, something hungry. 3 Padawans have required psychological counseling. One experienced temporary psychosis claiming she could see through the cracks in the universe. The scientist who studied his energy signature, Master Adampo, added grimly. We've reviewed the security footage. Before she died, she didn't just attack her colleagues. She tried to replicate the energy pattern. Built a crude resonance device using lab equipment. When she activated it, he trailed off, mandibles clicking with distress. The device created a microscopic tear in spacetime. Only existed for nanoseconds, but in that moment, something looked through. Our Force sensitives felt it across half the planet. Yoda's ears drooped with the weight of centuries of wisdom finding no answers. More than a refugee, Sentry is. A doorway, perhaps. A bridge between his reality and ours. And through that bridge, darkness seeps. Then we have to find him, Stellan said urgently. Before the Nihil do. Before. Too late for that, it may already be, Yoda interrupted. He gestured to a holographic display showing intercepted Nihil communications. Marchion Ro's agents searching the outer rim. Posted bounties for information. Not to kill Sentry, to recruit him. The Eye understands what we're only beginning to grasp, this being could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Master Avar turned from the window, her expression troubled. There's another complication. I've received reports from 3 different frontier worlds. People claiming to have seen the Golden Angel stopping raiders, protecting settlements, then vanishing before authorities arrive. If these sightings are accurate, Sentry is still trying to be a hero despite what happened on Wevo. Or the Void is hunting, offered Master Stellan darkly. Playing hero as a pretext to indulge in violence. We saw how quickly restraint turned to massacre. The council chamber doors opened without warning, a breach of protocol that made several masters reach for their lightsabers. A young Jedi archivist stumbled in, her face pale, clutching a datapad like a lifeline. "Masters, forgive the intrusion, but you need to see this. Now." She activated the datapad, projecting a hologram into the chamber's center. "We've been analyzing historical records, cross-referencing any mentions of beings with reality-warping abilities, entities that exist outside the Force. There's only one reference, and it's troubling." The hologram displayed ancient text in a language predating Basic by millennia, Sith script from the time before the Rule of Two, when Darksiders numbered in the thousands and waged open war against the Jedi. "This is from the Chronicles of Val," the archivist explained, her voice shaking slightly. "A Sith text describing the Great Schism 4,000 years ago. Most of it details infighting between Sith factions, but there's one passage that's never made sense. Until now." She highlighted a section, the translation appearing in glowing basic text. "And Darth Nihilus in his hunger consumed entire worlds, but even he feared the void that walks in light. For it was said in prophecies older than the Sith that one day a being would arrive from beyond the stars, carrying within itself the seed of uncreation. Not of the dark side, for the dark side is still of the Force, still of life. But this thing would be death without purpose, destruction without meaning, the end of all things dressed in the flesh of a savior. The ancient Rakata encountered such a being once, in the days before their fall. They named it the Golden Contradiction, for it saved them from extinction while simultaneously carrying the means of their annihilation. The Rakata tried to imprison it, to study it, to weaponize its power. They succeeded only in awakening something worse. When the entity finally departed their reality, it left behind only silence and the scattered remnants of an empire that had spanned the galaxy. Beware the Golden One who brings light but casts no shadow, for in truth, it is the shadow, and the light merely its disguise. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Every master present understood the implications. The Rakata had been the most technologically advanced civilization in galactic history, their infinite empire spanning hundreds of worlds at its peak. They'd built the Star Forge, wielded weapons that could destroy planets, enslaved entire species. And something matching Sentry's description had contributed to their fall. "Prophecy often misleads," Yoda said carefully. "Metaphor and reality, easily confused they are. But ignore this warning, foolish we would be." He looked around the circle of masters. If Sentry is this golden contradiction, if the void within him is truly the seed of uncreation, he didn't need to finish the thought. "We need to consider containment," Master Adampo said reluctantly. "Not imprisonment, I understand your reservations about that approach, but quarantine. A force-sealed facility where he can't hurt anyone, where we can study the void safely, find a way to separate it from Robert Reynolds." "He'll resist," Stellan said. "He's been imprisoned before, in his universe. It never ends well. And frankly, I don't think we have containment technology that could hold him. He destroyed a Corvette with a single punch. Vaporized buildings by thinking at them. Our strongest force users can't even sense him." Master Avar moved to the center of the circle, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd coordinated defense against the great hyperspace disaster. "Then we need a different approach. Not containment, not recruitment, but genuine help. If we can reach Robert Reynolds, the man, not the void, perhaps we can find a solution together." "Help how?" Adampo challenged. "We can't use the Force to heal his fractured mind. We have no technology that interfaces with his quantum energy signature. We're blind in uncharted territory. Then we seek knowledge from those who might understand," Avar said. She turned to the archivist. "That text mentioned the ancient Rakata encountered this before. Are there any surviving Rakata artifacts? Ruins? Data archives?" The archivist consulted her datapad rapidly. "The Rakata Empire fell 25,000 years ago. Most of their technology was destroyed or lost. But," she paused, highlighting a file. There's one location. The planet Lan, sometimes called Rakata Prime. It was their homeworld. There are ruins there, protected by automated defense systems even we haven't been able to fully bypass. If any records of the Golden Contradiction survived, they'd be there. Dangerous, Lan is, Yoda warned. Dark side energies permeate the ruins. Automated guardians attack all who approach. Lost, several archaeological expeditions have been. But it's our best chance, Stellan said. If the Rakata found a way to handle this before, that knowledge could save billions of lives. Or it could give us the means to destroy him, Master Adampo said quietly. If negotiation and containment fail, we may need to consider. No, Avar interrupted firmly. We don't kill people for what they might do. That's not the Jedi way. Robert Reynolds is a victim as much as a threat. He didn't choose this power. Didn't ask for the void. If we start treating him like a monster to be eliminated, we become what we're fighting against. Agree, I do, Yoda said, and his tone carried the weight of the Council's authority. To Lan, an expedition will go. Seek knowledge, not weapons. Understanding, not execution. He looked at Stellan. Lead this mission, you will. Take Master Avar. And, he paused, considering. Take Padawan Vernestra Ro. Young she may be, but her connection to the Force is unique. See things others cannot, she sometimes does. Stellan bowed. Yes, Master. When do we leave? Immediately, Yoda said. But first, one task remains. Find Sentry, you must. Convince him to come willingly. If he agrees to accompany you to Lan, to seek answers together, trust that builds. But if he refuses, then we track him anyway, Avar finished. Because the Nihil are hunting him, and Marchion Ro with Sentry's power would be unstoppable. In the depths of the Outer Rim, on a moon whose name had been forgotten when the Republic was young, Robert Reynolds sat alone in the ruins of an ancient temple. The structure had belonged to some pre-Republic civilization. The carving suggested Force users of some kind, though their philosophy seemed neither Jedi nor Sith. Just beings trying to understand the energy that connected all life. Sentry had chosen this place because it was empty. No civilians to protect. No raiders to fight. No one to hurt when he inevitably lost control again. He'd been meditating, if you could call it that, for 3 days straight, trying to push the void back into dormancy. The technique was something Reed Richards had taught him: focus on positive memories, reinforce the psychic barriers, remind himself why Robert Reynolds deserved to exist. It wasn't working. You can't meditate me away, the void whispered from the darkness behind his eyes. I'm not separate from you. I am you. The strong part. The part that doesn't apologize for power. The part that understands the universe's fundamental truth. Might makes right, and everything else is just sophisticated begging. You're wrong, Sentry said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty temple. I've known heroes. Real heroes. Captain America. Spider-Man. People who had power and used it to protect others without becoming tyrants. And where are they now? The void mocked. In another universe. Another reality. You ran away from them because even they couldn't save you. Because deep down, you know what you are. What we are. Not a hero. A bomb waiting to explode. Sentry's hands clenched into fists, golden light leaking between his fingers. I came to this galaxy to escape you. To find somewhere you couldn't follow. But you're right here. Right now. Always right here. Because I'm not a passenger. I'm the driver. You just sometimes manage to grab the wheel. A sound interrupted their internal argument, the distant whine of engines approaching. Sentry's enhanced senses tracked multiple small craft converging on his position. Not Jedi ships. The energy signatures were wrong. Too aggressive. Too predatory. Nihil. He stood slowly, molecular vision allowing him to see through the temple walls. 30 cloud ships circling the ruins. Ground forces deploying in tactical formations. And standing at the center of the encampment, easily identifiable by his distinctive armor and the deference other raiders showed him, was Marchion Ro. They found us, the Void observed with interest. The Pirate King came personally. He must want something badly. He wants you, Sentry muttered. Wants to turn us into his weapon. And what does the Jedi want? To cage us. To study us like a laboratory specimen. At least the pirate is honest about exploitation. Sentry walked toward the temple entrance, his form silhouetted against the sunlight beyond. The Nihil forces tensed, weapons raised but not firing. They'd been given orders, clearly. Don't attack unless attacked first. Marchion Ro stepped forward, his hands deliberately visible and empty of weapons, a gesture of peace from a man who dealt in violence. Robert Reynolds. I've been looking for you. We need to talk. I'm not interested in joining your pirates, Sentry said flatly. I'm not here to recruit, Marchion replied, which was a lie, but a convincing one. I'm here to warn you. The Jedi are coming. A strike team led by Master Stellan Gios. They're not coming to help, they're coming to imprison you. They've found some ancient text about a being matching your description, and it's convinced them you're too dangerous to exist freely. Sentry's eyes narrowed. How do you know this? Because I have spies everywhere, Marchion said simply. The Republic believes itself secure, but information flows like water when you know where to look. The Jedi Council is divided on what to do with you. Some want to help. Others want you locked away or eliminated before you become this galaxy's extinction event. He paused, letting that sink in. I'm offering you a third option, work with me. Not as a subordinate, but as a partner. Help me reshape the galaxy's power structure, and in return, I'll ensure no one ever tries to cage you again. The Void stirred with interest. He's not wrong about the Jedi. We saw it in the temple. The fear in their eyes. They'll turn on us eventually. They always do. Shut up, Sentry muttered. I'm not saying anything, Marchion said, confused. Not you. The Sentry trailed off, realizing how insane he must sound. Never mind. Here's my answer, no. I'm not joining you. I'm not helping you hurt people. And if the Jedi want to talk, I'll listen. But I'm done being anyone's weapon. Marchion studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I expected that answer. But I had to try. He turned as if to leave, then paused. One more thing. The text the Jedi found. It's about an ancient being called the Golden Contradiction. Supposedly contributed to the fall of the Rakata Empire 25,000 years ago. They think it's about you. Sentry felt ice form in his chest. What? Thought you'd want to know what they're planning, Marchion said. They're going to land, Rakata Prime, to search the ruins for information on how to deal with you. And based on what happened to the Rakata, he shrugged. Let's just say I don't think they're looking for therapy techniques. He walked back to his transport, leaving Sentry standing alone in the temple entrance, torn between three impossible choices: trust the Jedi who might imprison him, join the Nihil who would exploit him, or remain alone until the Void finally won their eternal struggle. Or, the Void whispered, we could find these ruins ourselves. Learn what the Rakata knew. Discover if there are others like us. Wouldn't that be interesting? For once, Robert Reynolds and the Void agreed on something. They needed answers. And if ancient civilizations had encountered beings like them before, those answers might lie in the ruins of Lan. Sentry took off toward the sky, golden contrail marking his passage as he set course for Rakata Prime, unaware that he was flying directly into the trap the Jedi, and the Sith watching from shadows, had been carefully constructing. Lan emerged from hyperspace like a wound in the fabric of space, a world of turquoise oceans and verdant islands, beautiful from orbit yet radiating wrongness through the Force. Master Stellan Gios felt at the moment the luminous endeavor entered the system, a distortion that made his teeth ache, a pressure behind his eyes that spoke of ancient sins still echoing across millennia. The dark side is strong here, observed Padawan Vernestra Ro from the co-pilot's seat. At 15 years old, she was the youngest Jedi Knight in a generation, a prodigy whose connection to the Force manifested in unique ways. Where others sensed emotions or intentions, Vernestra could sometimes perceive the deeper currents of destiny itself. But it's not just dark side energy. There's something older. Something that predates the distinction between light and dark. Master Avar Kriss stood behind them, her hands resting on their seats as she extended her senses toward the planet below. Her ability to hear the song of the Force gave her awareness few Jedi could match, but here that song was discordant, notes that didn't belong, harmonies that hurt to perceive. The Rakata built their empire on slavery and dark science, Avar said quietly. They wielded the Force through machines, through technology that shouldn't exist. When their civilization collapsed, they left behind ruins saturated with the suffering of billions. The Force itself remembers. And somewhere down there, Stellan added, are records of the golden contradiction. If we're right, if that prophecy refers to Sentry, then the Rakata might have discovered how to contain or control him. Or how to weaponize him, Vernestra said softly. Master Yoda warned us, seek knowledge, not weapons. But can we trust ourselves to know the difference when we find it? It was an uncomfortably perceptive question from someone so young. Stellan didn't have a good answer. The ship's proximity alarms blared. 3 massive turrets rose from land's largest island, their design angular and aggressive, ancient Rakata defense systems that had guarded these ruins for 25,000 years. Energy readings spiked as the turrets charged weapons that made Republic technology look primitive. Evasive. Stellan shouted, throwing the ship into a hard turn. Crimson energy lanced through the space they'd occupied seconds before, not blaster fire, but something more fundamental. Where the beams passed, space itself seemed to crack and repair, reality glitching like a damaged hologram. They're using quantum disruption weapons, Vernestra breathed, her Force senses perceiving what sensors couldn't. Not trying to destroy our ship. Trying to erase it from existence. Shields won't help, Avar confirmed, feeling the Force scream warnings. We need to get out of their firing arc. Stellan dove toward the planet's surface, using the atmosphere as cover. The turrets tracked them but didn't fire, apparently programmed not to risk damaging the ruins they protected. The luminous endeavor screamed through upper atmosphere, hull heating to dangerous levels, before leveling out above an island dotted with massive stone structures. There, Vernestra said, pointing to the largest complex, a pyramid of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. That's where we need to go. I can feel it. Something's waiting there. Something that's been waiting a very, very long time. They set down on a landing platform that had probably been built before humans developed agriculture on distant Coruscant. The stone was smooth, seamless, showing no signs of weathering despite millennia of exposure. As they descended the boarding ramp, all 3 Jedi felt the weight of history pressing down, the ghosts of an empire that had ruled the galaxy through conquest and cruelty. Stay alert, Stellan said unnecessarily, his hand on his lightsaber. The defense turrets aren't the only automated guardians. Previous expeditions reported war droids, security systems, and, he paused, uncomfortable with what he was about to say. And some kind of artificial intelligence that drives organics mad if they interact with it too long. Comforting, Vernestra muttered, igniting her unique lightsaber, a purple blade she'd constructed using techniques from a Force vision. The weapon hummed with a slightly different frequency than standard Jedi blades, a physical manifestation of her unusual connection to the Force. They entered the pyramid through an archway inscribed with Rakata script. Avar translated as they walked, through domination, freedom. Through technology, transcendence. Through sacrifice, immortality. She shuddered. The Rakata philosophy was fundamentally opposed to everything the Jedi represent. They saw the Force as a tool to be exploited, not a guide to be followed. The interior corridors were vast, built for beings larger than humans. Bioluminescent panels still functioned after 25 millennia, casting everything in sickly green light. The walls were covered in more inscriptions, but these were different, not philosophical declarations, but warnings. "Turn back," Vernestra read, her voice echoing. "That which was sealed must remain sealed. The bridge between realities cannot be controlled, only survived." "Bridge between realities," Stellan repeated. "That's what Sentry is, isn't it? His very existence connects his universe to ours. A living doorway." They descended deeper into the pyramid, following corridors that seemed to shift and reconfigure when they weren't looking directly at them. Spatial manipulation technology, Vernestra realized, the Rakata had learned to fold space itself, making their structures larger on the inside than outside. It was technology that shouldn't be possible, that violated fundamental principles of physics. Or would have, in a normal universe. But Sentry had already proven that normal was relative. The corridor opened into a chamber so vast it could have held a starship. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The walls were lined with stasis pods, thousands of them, stretching into the distance, each containing something. Vernestra approached the nearest pod, wiping away millennia of dust to peer inside. She immediately wished she hadn't. The being inside was humanoid, but wrong. Its skin was translucent, revealing musculature that pulsed with light, not blood flowing through veins, but pure energy coursing through a biological framework. Its eyes were open, golden and aware, tracking her movement despite being sealed in stasis for thousands of years. "By the Force," Avar whispered, moving from pod to pod. "They're all like this. Hundreds of them. Beings made of light and matter, just like Sentry." "Not like Sentry," Stellan corrected grimly, pointing to a larger pod at the chamber's center. "Like the original." The central stasis pod was 3 times the size of the others, reinforced with technology so advanced it made Republic science look like children's toys. Inside floated a being that radiated power even through the containment field, a figure that shifted between forms too fast to track, as if it couldn't decide whether to be solid or energy, matter or light. And its eyes, when they focused on the Jedi, were entirely black. A hologram flickered to life above the central pod, a Rakata in ceremonial armor, its amphibious features twisted with fear and desperation. The recording was ancient, but the desperation in its voice transcended time. "I am Lord Yggdrasil, Prime Architect of the Infinite Empire. If you are seeing this, our civilization has fallen, and you have discovered what we should never have created. 13,000 years ago, our scientists detected an anomaly in the space between stars, a tear in reality through which something fell. We named it the Radiant One, and foolishly believed we could harness its power. The being was cooperative at first. It wanted only peace, isolation, a place to rest where it couldn't hurt others. We promised sanctuary in exchange for studying its abilities. For 5 years, we learned. We replicated its energy signature. Created hundreds of constructs infused with its power, living weapons we used to expand our empire to unprecedented heights. But the being had another self. A darkness it called the Void. And that darkness learned from us. Learned cruelty. Learned that power unchecked could reshape reality itself. When it finally emerged fully, it did not destroy the infinite empire through violence alone. It corrupted the very technology we'd built using its power. Every construct, every weapon, every power source we created from its essence, all turned against us simultaneously. Billions died. Worlds burned. Our empire collapsed in weeks. We managed to contain the original being only through sacrifice, 10,000 Force users linking their lives to the stasis field, dying to keep it imprisoned. But the damage was done. The constructs, these failed copies you see around you, remain in stasis because we have no way to destroy them without releasing the same corruption that ended our civilization. Whoever finds this recording, do not free the Radiant One. Do not study it. Do not attempt to replicate its power. And if another being like it ever appears in this galaxy, the Rakata's voice broke. Kill it. Immediately. Show no mercy. No matter how benevolent it seems, no matter how much it claims to want peace, inside every Radiant One dwells a void, and the void will eventually win. The hologram flickered out, leaving the three Jedi standing in horrified silence. This can't be Sentry, Vernestra said desperately. He's nothing like this. He's trying to be good, trying to control the void. He's not. Exactly the same, Avar finished grimly. A being from outside our reality, carrying immense power and a darkness within. The only difference is timing. The Rakata's Radiant One lasted 5 years before the void took over completely. Sentry has been fighting his darkness for how long? In his universe? Years, Stellan said quietly. He told me he's been institutionalized multiple times. That every attempt to help him has failed. That the void always eventually emerges. He looked at the central stasis pod, at the being that had ended an empire. What if he's just a slower version of the same disaster? What if we're watching the early stages of another extinction event? Then we have to help him, Vernestra insisted. Before it's too late. Before he becomes this. Or we have to stop him, Stellan countered. The Rakata tried to help their Radiant One. Offered it sanctuary, study, support. And look what happened. Maybe the only solution is. A sound echoed through the vast chamber, the distinctive crack of energy discharge. All three Jedi spun, lightsabers raised, to find they were no longer alone. Sentry floated at the chamber entrance, golden aura illuminating the darkness, his face unreadable as he stared at the stasis pods, at the evidence of what beings like him could become. I heard everything, he said quietly. Every word of that recording. I got here hours ago. Been listening to you debate whether I deserve to live. Robert, Avar started, stepping forward with her lightsaber lowered. We're not. Yes, you are, Sentry interrupted, and there was something terrible in his voice, not anger, but resignation. You're wondering if I'm worth the risk. If helping me is even possible, or if you're just delaying the inevitable. He gestured to the central pod. That thing in there, that's my future, isn't it? That's what I become when the void finally wins. We don't know that, Vernestra said urgently. You're different. You're fighting it. You came to this galaxy seeking peace, not conquest. That has to count for. For nothing, the void said, and Sentry's eyes flickered black for a moment. Did you not listen to the recording? The Radiant One also sought peace. Also wanted isolation. Also believed it could control the darkness inside. The only difference is that it had an entire empire of fools willing to study it, replicate it, weaponize it. And when I emerged, I used everything they'd built to burn their civilization to ash. The void's presence retreated, and Sentry's eyes returned to gold, but the anguish on his face was heartbreaking. I came here hoping to find answers. Maybe some technique, some technology the Rakata had discovered to suppress or eliminate the void. But instead I found this. He looked at the failed constructs lining the walls. Proof that beings like me are inherently corrupting. That our very existence poisons everything we touch. Stellan's hand tightened on his lightsaber. The strategic part of his mind was already calculating, could they contain Sentry if they struck now, while he was emotionally compromised? The stasis field technology was still functional. If they could. Don't, Sentry said, and his eyes met Stellan's with terrible clarity. Whatever you're thinking, don't. I could kill all three of you before you finished igniting your lightsabers. I could tear this entire pyramid apart at the molecular level. I'm showing restraint because Robert Reynolds still believes in mercy. But if you attack me, the void will respond. And we both know how that ends. Then what do you want? Avar asked, her voice carrying genuine compassion despite the fear radiating through her. Why did you come here, Robert? What were you hoping to find? Sentry looked at the central stasis pod one more time, at his potential future imprisoned in ancient technology, and made a decision that would reshape the galaxy's immediate future. I was hoping to find hope, he said quietly. Some evidence that beings like me can be saved. That the void isn't inevitable. That I'm not just a countdown timer to apocalypse. His shoulders slumped. But that recording made one thing clear, the longer I exist in this galaxy, the greater the danger I pose. Not through malice. Through simple existence. My energy signature can be studied, replicated, corrupted. I'm not just a threat, I'm a contagion. He turned toward the chamber exit. I'm leaving this galaxy. Going back into the void between realities where I can't hurt anyone. It's the only solution that doesn't end in mass casualties. Wait, Vernestra called out, and there was something in her voice, a certainty that came from her unique connection to the Force. That's not the only solution. And it might not even be possible anymore. Sentry paused. What do you mean? The tear you created when you entered this universe, Vernestra said, moving toward him despite Stellan's warning gesture. It's been growing. My Force visions showed me, reality is thinner now around you. Like paper that's been folded too many times. If you try to tear through again, you might not be able to control where you go. Or worse, you might tear something that can't be repaired. Then what do you suggest? Sentry demanded, and there was desperation in his voice, Robert Reynolds clinging to the hope that someone, somewhere, might have an answer. We find a way to separate you from the void, Vernestra said. Not suppress it. Not contain it. Actually separate the two personalities into distinct beings. The Rakata tried to imprison darkness. We need to excise it. Impossible, Stellan said. The void isn't a parasite or a possession. It's part of his fundamental nature, written into his molecular structure. In his universe, maybe, Vernestra countered. But this is a different reality. The Force exists here. And the Force has been used to heal split personalities, to separate conjoined consciousnesses, even to transfer minds between bodies. What if we could use the Force to? An alarm shrieked through the chamber. Not a Rakata defense system, something new. Avar's eyes widened as she felt danger approaching through the Force. We're not alone, she said urgently. Someone else is here. Multiple someones. And there. The chamber's far wall exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris strode a figure in black robes, face hidden beneath a hood, but radiating power that made every Jedi's instinct scream danger. Yellow eyes gleamed from beneath that hood as the Sith Lord, the first any of them had encountered, believing the Sith extinct for centuries, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. Fascinating. The Jedi, the Radiant One, and the key to reshaping the galaxy, all in one convenient location. Lord Gravit's descendant thanks you for making this so easy. Behind the Sith, a dozen figures in dark armor emerged, not Nihil, not Imperial, but something else. Force users trained in darkness, wielding red lightsabers, their presence in the Force like open wounds. The Sith had been watching. Planning. Waiting for this exact moment. And now they'd made their move. The Sith Lord's yellow eyes fixed on Sentry with predatory intensity, and the air itself seemed to thicken with dark side energy. The dozen warriors behind him ignited their crimson blades in perfect synchronization, a display of discipline that spoke of years of hidden training, a secret order that had operated beneath the Republic's notice. I am Darth Tenebrous, the Sith Lord announced, his voice resonating with power that made the ancient stones tremble. And I have waited decades for an opportunity like this. A being from beyond reality, carrying power the Force cannot touch. Do you understand what you represent, Robert Reynolds? You're not just a weapon. You're proof that the Sith philosophy is correct, that power exists beyond the Jedi's precious Force, and those strong enough to claim it will reshape the galaxy. Master Stellan moved between Tenebrous and Sentry, his blue lightsaber casting stark shadows. The Sith are extinct. Have been for centuries. You're just another Darksider pretending to. Extinct? Tenebrous laughed, and the sound carried genuine amusement. How wonderfully naive. The Sith have been here all along, hiding in plain sight, following the rule of two, one master to hold power, one apprentice to crave it. When your Jedi Order grew fat and complacent during your High Republic, we waited in shadows, gathering strength, watching for the moment to strike. His gaze returned to Sentry. And then you fell from the sky. A sign. An opportunity too perfect to ignore. Avar Kriss stepped forward, her connection to the Force allowing her to sense the wrongness emanating from Tenebrous and his warriors. They weren't just dark side users, they were voids themselves, black holes in the Force's song where there should be living presences. What do you want with him? Want? I want to do what the Jedi lacked the courage to attempt. Tenebrous gestured to the stasis pods lining the chamber walls. The Rakata tried to replicate the Radiant One's power through crude technology and failed because they didn't understand the fundamental truth: power like this cannot be copied through machines. It must be taken. Absorbed. Claimed by one strong enough to master both the light it projects and the darkness it conceals. You want to steal my power, Sentry said flatly, golden light intensifying around him. Join the club. In my universe, at least a dozen villains tried. None succeeded. Because they tried to take it by force, Tenebrous countered. I'm offering you something different, willing partnership. The void within you, it seeks expression, acceptance, release from the prison of Robert Reynolds' morality. I can give it that freedom. Let me train you in the ways of the dark side. Not to suppress your darkness, but to embrace it. Channel it. Transform it from a burden into the foundation of ultimate power. That's insane, Vernestra said, her young voice sharp with conviction. The dark side corrupts. Consumes. It would turn him into exactly what the Rakata's recording warned about. Warned about. Or revealed the truth of. Tenebrous turned his yellow gaze to the young Padawan. The Rakata's Radiant One didn't fall because it embraced darkness. It fell because it fought a war within itself, just as Robert Reynolds fights now. A house divided cannot stand. But a house united under one philosophy, one purpose, he smiled beneath his hood. That becomes unstoppable. The void stirred in Sentry's mind, and for the first time, it didn't sound mocking or predatory. It sounded curious. He's not wrong, the void whispered. We've been fighting each other for years. You trying to suppress me. Me trying to take control. What if we stopped fighting? What if we worked together? Imagine what we could accomplish. You'd destroy everything, Sentry muttered. That's all you want, destruction. That's what you think I want because you've never asked what I actually need. The void's tone shifted, becoming almost plaintive. I don't want random destruction, Robert. I want recognition. Respect. I want the universe to acknowledge that we're not just another hero, we're something greater. Something beyond their categories of good and evil. This is exactly what the dark side does, Avar said urgently, sensing the internal struggle playing out across Sentry's face. It offers you what seems like understanding, acceptance, power without restraint. But it's a lie. The dark side feeds on pain and fear. It would hollow you out and wear your skin like a costume. Would it? Tenebrous challenged. Or is that what the Jedi tell themselves to justify their limitations? I sense no force in this being. The dark side cannot corrupt what it cannot touch. But it can offer philosophy. Guidance. A framework for channeling power without guilt. He extended his hand toward Sentry. Join me. Let me show you what the Sith have understood for millennia: power is neither good nor evil. It simply is. And those who wield it without apology reshape reality itself. Stellan moved to intercept, but 3 of Tenebrous warriors blocked his path, red blades humming. "Stand aside," Stellan commanded. "We won't let you corrupt him." "Corrupt? I'm offering salvation." Tenebrous' voice hardened. "The Jedi would imprison him. Study him. Eventually destroy him when they realize he cannot be contained. I offer partnership. Freedom. The right to exist without apology." He looked at Sentry. "The choice is yours, Robert Reynolds. Join the Sith willingly, or watch as the Jedi debate your execution in their comfortable temple while pretending it's for the greater good." For a terrible moment, Sentry considered it. The void within him practically purred with interest, seduced by the Sith's philosophy of power without restraint. And the worst part? Tenebrous wasn't entirely wrong. The Jedi did fear him. Would probably try to imprison him eventually. He'd seen that pattern too many times to trust their promises of help. But he'd also seen what happened when beings like him embraced darkness without restraint. He'd lived through the void's rampages. Counted the bodies. Stared into the eyes of people who trusted Sentry to save them, only to die when the void decided mercy was weakness. "No," Sentry said quietly. The chamber's temperature dropped 10 degrees. Tenebrous' hand fell to his side, and his voice carried profound disappointment. "Unfortunate. I had hoped you would be wise enough to accept freely. But wisdom comes from experience, and you're still young to this galaxy's realities." He raised his voice, addressing his warriors. "Take him. Alive if possible. Dead if necessary. We only need his body to study his energy signature." The Sith warriors moved with frightening coordination, 12 lightsabers converging on Sentry from multiple angles, their strikes perfectly timed to penetrate any normal defense. Against a Jedi, it would have been overwhelming. Against most Force users, it would have been lethal. Against Sentry, it was practice. He didn't dodge. Didn't block. The crimson blade struck his golden aura and stopped dead, plasma unable to cut through molecular manipulation that existed outside the Force's rules. Sentry raised his hand, and 3 of the warriors simply flew backward, hitting the chamber walls with bone-breaking force. Not killed, he was still trying to show restraint, but definitely neutralized. "I said no," Sentry repeated, and his voice carried harmonics that vibrated in the ancient stones. "I'm not joining anyone. Not the Jedi who fear me. Not the Sith who want to exploit me. I'm done being everyone's project." Tenebrous' expression shifted from disappointment to calculation. "Impressive. But you're holding back. The void wants to emerge. I can feel it, even if I cannot sense you through the Force. Every moment you restrain yourself, it grows stronger." He gestured, and dark side lightning erupted from his fingertips, not toward Sentry, but toward the 3 Jedi. Avar barely managed to deflect the attack with her lightsaber. Stellan threw up a Force barrier. But Vernestra, caught off guard by the speed of the assault, took the lightning directly. The young Padawan screamed as dark side energy coursed through her, her unique connection to the Force making her particularly vulnerable to corruption. "No." Sentry moved faster than thought, interposing himself between Vernestra and Tenebrous. The lightning struck his back, not Force lightning exactly, but close enough. It hurt. Actually hurt, which nothing physical had done in years. The dark side energy couldn't corrupt him, but it could cause pain. And pain made the void hungry. "That's it," the void whispered, surging forward. "They attacked the child. They hurt someone under our protection. Now we can respond without guilt. Now we can show them what real power looks like. Robert, fight it." Avar shouted, feeling the shift in his energy even though she couldn't sense him through the Force. "Don't let him provoke you into." Too late. Sentry's eyes went black. His golden aura darkened, taking on crimson edges that looked disturbingly like the Sith's lightning. When he turned to face Tenebrous, the expression on his face was the void's predatory smile. You want to see power without restraint? The void said, and its voice carried no humanity whatsoever. I'll show you why Robert Reynolds spends every waking moment terrified of me. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration. The void moved through the Sith warriors like a hurricane through paper. Lightsabers melted before touching its skin. Force abilities, pushes, lightning, even one warrior's attempt at force crush, splashed off its aura like water off stone. The void didn't just defeat them. It unmade them. Molecular manipulation turned armor into vapor. Energy projection vaporized weapons. And when one warrior tried to flee, the void simply reached out and stopped his molecules from vibrating, instant absolute zero freeze, the warrior collapsing into frozen shards. Stop! Stellan shouted, horror in his voice. You're killing them. They attacked first, the void said reasonably, catching another warrior by the throat and lifting him effortlessly. They tried to take me prisoner. This is self-defense. It studied the struggling Sith with clinical interest. Though I admit, it feels good to stop pretending. To stop apologizing for being stronger. Robert spent so long teaching me to hold back. Time to remember what I really am. Tenebrous watched his warriors fall with expressions ranging from surprise to calculation. He'd expected power. He'd even expected resistance. But this? This was beyond anything the Sith archives had prepared him for. The void wasn't just powerful, it was fundamentally outside the rules that governed force combat. It couldn't be predicted, couldn't be countered through traditional means. Fascinating, Tenebrous breathed. You're not corrupted by the dark side. You're something else entirely. Something that makes the dark side look tame. His yellow eyes gleamed with terrible excitement. You're perfect. The void dropped its current victim, unconscious but alive, barely, and turned its black eyes to Tenebrous. Perfect. I'm proof that gods exist. I'm what happens when power transcends morality. And you're just another insect pretending to be a predator. It moved toward Tenebrous, and even the Sith Lord took an involuntary step backward. But before the void could reach him, something unexpected happened. Marchion Ro, still recovering from the Force lightning, reached out with her unique connection to the Force. She couldn't sense Sentry directly, he existed outside the Force's influence. But she could sense the space he occupied, the absence where a presence should be. And in that moment of perfect clarity, she saw the truth. Robert Reynolds and the void weren't two beings sharing one body. They were one being fractured by trauma, split by power too vast for a single consciousness to contain. The division wasn't supernatural. It was psychological. A defense mechanism taken to extreme. Robert, she shouted, and poured everything she had into the Force, not attacking, but reaching. Projecting memories she'd glimpsed from him earlier, the people he'd saved on Wevo before the void emerged. The mother and daughter he'd protected. The desperate hope in his voice when he'd asked if beings like him could be saved. The void stumbled. Its black eyes flickered, gold bleeding through for a fraction of a second. What are you doing? It snarled, turning away from Tenebrous. Reminding you who you are, Vernestra said, struggling to maintain the connection despite the pain from the lightning burns. You're not a monster. You're a man who's been fighting alone for so long he split himself in half to survive. But you don't have to fight alone anymore. Inside Sentry's fractured psyche, Robert Reynolds heard her words and felt something break, not his last restraint, but the wall he'd built between his personalities. For just a moment, he stopped fighting the void and started listening to it. Why do you hate me? He asked. Because you're ashamed of me, the void answered. Because you treat our power like a curse instead of a gift. Because you'd rather die than admit that strength without apology is what we actually are. I'm not ashamed of power. I'm terrified of losing control. Of hurting people. Then stop trying to control me like I'm an enemy. Work with me. Let me out when you need strength, pull me back when you need compassion. We're not two people. We're one person who needs to stop fighting himself. It was such a simple truth. So obvious in retrospect. The reason therapy never worked. The reason no prison could hold him. The reason the void kept winning, because every time Robert Reynolds tried to suppress it, he was suppressing himself. The void's black eyes flickered. Gold returned, but didn't fully take over. When Sentry spoke, it was in a voice that carried both personalities, neither fully Robert nor fully void, but something integrated. I understand now, he said, looking at his hands as golden light and dark tendrils intertwined without conflict. You're not evil. You're just the part of me that refuses to apologize for existing. And I'm the part that remembers why we wanted power in the first place, to help people, not hurt them. Tenebrous, sensing an opportunity slipping away, raised his hand for another lightning attack. But before he could release it, the pyramid shook. The central stasis pod, containing the Rakata's original Radiant One, began to crack. No, Avar breathed. The energy discharge from the combat. It's destabilizing the containment field. The pod shattered. The being inside opened its completely black eyes, no gold, no humanity, just pure void that had waited 25,000 years for freedom, and smiled with a mouth full of teeth that looked like they were made from solidified darkness. Finally, it said in a voice like the universe ending. Finally, another of my kind. Welcome, brother. Let's show these mortals what true power looks like. And the Radiant One that had destroyed the infinite empire began to rise. The Radiant One rose from its shattered stasis pod like a nightmare-given form. Where Sentry's power manifested as golden light with dark undertones, this ancient being was pure darkness wrapped in the memory of radiance, a star that had burned out millennia ago but refused to stop shining. Its body flickered between solid and energy, matter and void, as if existence itself couldn't decide how to classify it. 25,000 years, it said, its voice layered with harmonics that made everyone's teeth ache. 25,000 years locked in forced stasis by beings who thought they could cage a god. Do you know what happens to consciousness when it's trapped alone with itself for that long? Every moment of that imprisonment, I perfected my hatred. The being's attention fixed on Sentry, and something like recognition sparked in its black eyes. You're young. Newly transformed. Still fighting yourself, I can tell. Still believing the lie they tell you, that you can be both powerful and good, strong and moral. It laughed, and the sound made reality crack at the edges. They'll teach you the truth eventually. Power is incompatible with morality. You can be one or the other, never both. You're wrong, Sentry said, and his voice carried both Robert Reynolds and the void in uneasy harmony. I've known heroes. People with power who used it to protect others. It's possible to be both strong and... In your universe, perhaps, the Radiant One interrupted. But this galaxy operates on different rules. The Force binds everything here, light and dark, good and evil, locked in eternal conflict. There is no middle ground. No integration. Ask them. It gestured toward the Jedi. Ask them if they believe you can embrace your darkness without being corrupted. Ask them if they trust you after watching what you did to those Sith warriors. Master Stellan's silence was answer enough. His hand remained on his lightsaber, his expression torn between sympathy and strategic assessment. Even Master Avar, who had shown Sentry nothing but compassion, couldn't quite meet his eyes. You see, the Radiant One said. They fear you. And fear always transforms into hatred, containment, or elimination. I learned this lesson the hard way. The Rakata promised me sanctuary, then tried to weaponize me. When I resisted, they branded me a threat and locked me away. Its form flickered, growing larger, more imposing. But I had 25 millennia to plan my revenge. And now, with another of my kind here, we can do what I could not accomplish alone, burn this force-drunk galaxy to ash and rebuild it without their precious light and dark dichotomy. I'm not helping you destroy anything, Sentry said firmly. You think you have a choice. The Radiant One moved with impossible speed, closing the distance between them before Sentry could react. Its hand gripped Sentry's shoulder, and where they touched, reality screamed. We're the same, you and I, beings from beyond the Force, carrying power that exists outside their rules. When two of us combine our strength. Energy exploded outward from the point of contact. Not Force energy. Something older, more fundamental. The chamber's walls cracked. The remaining stasis pods shattered. And the failed Rakata constructs, those hundreds of partially successful copies of the Radiant One, began to wake. No. Vernestra shouted, feeling through the Force as the constructs' consciousnesses sparked to life. They're all void corrupted. All darkness with no balancing light. If they all wake, then this planet becomes ground zero for another Infinite Empire extinction event, Darth Tenebrous finished grimly. Even the Sith Lord understood the magnitude of disaster unfolding. We need to destroy the constructs before they fully activate. For once, the Sith and I agree, Avar said, already moving toward the nearest row of pods. Her green lightsaber flashed, cutting through reinforced stasis fields that had lasted millennia. The construct inside began to dissolve, not dying, but returning to the base energy state from which the Rakata had tried to forge them. Stellan and the surviving Sith warriors joined her, red and blue blades working in unprecedented cooperation. Vernestra, still weakened but determined, used her unique Force connection to sense which constructs were closest to full activation, prioritizing targets. But there were hundreds of pods. And they had seconds. Sentry tore himself away from the Radiant One's grip, golden and dark aura flaring as he reasserted control over his own form. You want to destroy the galaxy because they hurt you. I understand that rage. The Void and I, we've felt it too. But revenge isn't the same as justice. Destruction isn't the same as freedom. Philosophy from an infant, the Radiant One mocked. You've been in this galaxy for what? Days? Weeks? I was here for 5 years before the Void One. 5 years of trying to be their hero, their savior, their bridge to power they couldn't comprehend. And in the end, they still imprisoned me. Its form expanded, filling the chamber with suffocating presence. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm teaching them the fundamental lesson they refuse to learn, that which cannot be controlled must be destroyed before it destroys you. They were right to fear me. But they were fools to think they could cage me. A construct broke free from its pod before Avar could reach it, a twisted thing that was more void than radiance, all black tendrils and consuming hunger. It attacked the nearest target without strategy or mercy, one of Tenebrous' Sith warriors. The man's scream was cut short as molecular manipulation turned his body into component atoms. Fall back. Stellan commanded. Get to the pyramid entrance. We can bottleneck them in the corridors. No, Sentry said, and there was terrible certainty in his voice. Running won't work. These things are like me, they can phase through walls, fly faster than your ships, survive in vacuum. If they escape this chamber, they'll spread across LAN. Then nearby systems. Then the entire galaxy. He looked at the Radiant One. You know I'm right. You remember what happened to the Rakata. These constructs aren't perfected beings, they're failed copies that want only to consume and destroy. Even you can't control them. I don't need to control them, the Radiant One said. I just need to point them in the right direction and watch them burn everything the Jedi built. Poetic justice, don't you think? They tried to create weapons from my essence, and those weapons will be their undoing. More pods shattered. 5 constructs emerged. Then 10. Then 20. The chamber descended into chaos as creatures of darkness and corrupted light attacked everything that moved, Jedi, Sith, each other, even the Radiant One itself when one got too close. Sentry made a decision. The kind of decision he'd been avoiding since arriving in this galaxy. The kind that required trusting the part of himself he'd always tried to suppress. I need your help, Robert Reynolds said to the void. Not to destroy. To contain. Can we do that together? Finally, the void responded, and there was satisfaction in its tone. Finally you understand. We're strongest when we work together, your compassion guiding my power, my strength enabling your mercy. Yes. We can do this. But it's going to hurt. Everyone out, Sentry commanded, his voice carrying authority that made even Tenebrous pause. Jedi, Sith, I don't care. Get out of this chamber now. Get off the planet if you can. I'm going to do something that will make the Void's earlier rampage look gentle. What are you planning? Avar demanded. Molecular destabilization on a massive scale, Sentry said, already beginning to glow brighter, the energy around him building to catastrophic levels. I'm going to vaporize every construct in this chamber, break them down to base elements, scatter their atoms across the planet's atmosphere where they can't reform. But the energy release will be enormous. Potentially enough to collapse this entire pyramid. So unless you want to be here when that happens. You'll die, Vernestra said, horror in her young voice. Maybe, Sentry admitted. Probably not. I've survived worse. But I can't guarantee I'll be sane when it's over. The Void and I, we're learning to work together, but this much power, this much destruction, even for a good cause, he met her eyes. It might be the last time Robert Reynolds is in control. So go. Please. Let me do this one good thing before I become what everyone fears. The Radiant One laughed, but there was something other than mockery in the sound, maybe recognition, maybe respect. You'd sacrifice your sanity to protect them? The very beings who would imprison you. That's either nobility or stupidity. It's being human, Sentry said. Something you forgot during your 25,000 years of hatred. He raised his hands, and golden dark energy began to build between his palms, not a weapon, but a fundamental reordering of matter and energy on a scale that would make nuclear explosions look quaint. Last chance. Everyone out. Now. Stellan grabbed Vernestra and ran. Avar followed, herding the surviving Sith warriors ahead of her, enemy today, but corpses if they stayed. Even Darth Tenebrous, calculating to the last, recognized tactical withdrawal when he saw it. Within seconds, the chamber had cleared except for 3 beings, Sentry, the Radiant One, and dozens of emerging constructs that recognized prey and moved to attack. You can leave too, Sentry said to the Radiant One. I'm not trying to destroy you. Just your mistakes. And miss this? The ancient being moved to the chamber's edge, settling into a crouch like a spectator at a particularly interesting execution. I want to see what you become when you stop holding back. Want to see if you'll prove me right, that power ultimately corrupts everyone who wields it. Sentry closed his eyes, opened his arms, and let the void rise to full strength while keeping Robert Reynolds' conscience as anchor. The integration wasn't perfect. Would probably never be perfect. But for this moment, in this place, 2 halves of one being worked in terrible harmony. The energy release began. Molecular manipulation on a scale never before witnessed in this galaxy. Sentry became a living furnace, breaking chemical bonds, shattering atomic structures, reducing complex organisms to fundamental particles. The constructs rushed at him from all directions, but they never reached him. 1 meter from his skin, they simply stopped existing as coherent matter. The screaming started, not from the constructs, who lacked the sophistication for sound, but from reality itself. Space cracked where Sentry stood. Time stuttered. The Force, which couldn't touch him directly, recoiled from the area like flesh from flame, creating a void in the cosmic energy field that every Force sensitive for 100 light-years suddenly felt. In the corridors above, racing toward the surface, Vernestra stumbled as the Force went silent in a sphere around the pyramid. Master Avar, she gasped. The Force, it's gone. I can't feel anything except wrong, Avar finished, her face pale. That's what happens when you break the universe's rules. The Force can't exist where he's doing what he's doing. We need to get further away before. The pyramid shook. Not from explosion, but from implosion, matter collapsing as molecular bonds failed en masse. They ran faster. In the chamber below, Sentry stood at the epicenter of controlled apocalypse. One by one, the constructs dissolved. 2 dozen. 3 dozen. 50. Each dissolution required more power, more control, more integration between the parts of himself that wanted to destroy and the parts that wanted to save. "This is amazing," the void whispered, and there was genuine awe in its voice. "This is what we were meant to be. Not hero or monster, but something that transcends both. Power used with purpose. Destruction in service of preservation." "Don't get used to it," Robert Reynolds responded. "This is emergency measures. Not our default state." "Why not? Look what we can accomplish when we stop fighting ourselves. Imagine what we could do to protect this galaxy if we stayed like this." "Because power without restraint becomes tyranny," Sentry said aloud, answering both the void and himself. "Because someone has to know when to stop. And that someone is me." The last construct dissolved. The chamber fell silent except for the cracking of stone and the hum of energy still radiating from Sentry's form. He stood alone among the ruins of the Rakata's failed attempts to replicate godhood, surrounded by empty pods and ash. And the Radiant One, still crouched at the chamber's edge, looked at him with something that might have been disappointment or might have been approval. "You stopped," it observed. "You had power sufficient to vaporize this entire planet. Could have ended the Jedi, the Sith, everyone who threatened you. But you stopped. That's the difference between us," Sentry said, his voice exhausted but firm. "You learned that power without restraint is the only truth. I learned that restraint is what makes power meaningful." He looked at the ancient being with something like pity. "You spent 25,000 years perfecting hatred. I've spent years learning that hatred is easy. Mercy is hard. And meaningful things are always hard." The Radiant One was silent for a long moment. Then it laughed, not mockery this time, but genuine amusement tinged with sadness. "Perhaps you're right. Or perhaps you're just younger, and haven't been hurt enough yet." It rose, its form beginning to fade, not dying, but choosing to depart. "I'm leaving this galaxy, Robert Reynolds. Not because you defeated me, you didn't. But because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten, what I was like before the Void One. And I need time to remember if that version of me can be recovered." "Where will you go?" Sentry asked. "The same place you were heading. The void between realities. Places where angry gods can rage without hurting innocence." The Radiant One paused at the threshold of dissolution. "A word of advice, from one of your kind to another, they will never fully trust you. The Jedi, the Sith, the Republic, they'll always see you as a threat because you exist outside their understanding. So decide now what you want to be. Their weapon. Their prisoner. Or something else entirely." "I'll be their ally," Sentry said. "Not because they trust me, but because it's right. That's enough." "Noble," the Radiant One said, and then it was gone, vanished into whatever spaces existed between dimensions, leaving Sentry alone in the collapsing chamber. He flew upward through the pyramid, punching through stone and metal with casual power, emerging into land's atmosphere just as the entire structure imploded. The massive black pyramid collapsed into itself, ancient technology and forgotten horrors disappearing into rubble. On the landing platform 3 kilometers away, the Jedi and Sith watched the destruction with very different expressions. The Jedi felt relief mixed with continued wariness. The Sith felt frustrated ambition and grudging respect. Sentry descended slowly, landing 20 meters from both groups, close enough to talk, far enough to run if they attacked. His golden dark aura had stabilized, no longer flickering between states but maintaining a steady balance that suggested integration rather than conflict. "It's done," he said simply. "The constructs are destroyed. The Radiant One is gone. And he looked at his hands, at the power that had just unmade hundreds of beings. I learned something about myself. What? Vernestra asked, stepping forward despite Stellan's warning hand. That the void isn't evil, Sentry said. It's just me without filters. Without compassion or restraint. And when I stop fighting it and start working with it, when I let it be strong while I stay sane, we can do things I never thought possible. He met her eyes. You were right, Padawan. We're not two beings. We're one being who's been at war with himself. And I hope, we're finally starting to find peace. Darth Tenebrous stepped forward, yellow eyes calculating. Fascinating. You've achieved integration. Balanced light and darkness without the Force. That's, he paused, perhaps the first time in centuries a Sith had been at a loss for words. That's unprecedented. The offer stands, Robert Reynolds. Join the Sith. Help us understand what you've accomplished. Together we could. No, Sentry said firmly. I'm not joining anyone's faction. Not the Jedi who want to study me. Not the Sith who want to exploit me. I'm going to find my own path. Then you'll walk it alone, Tenebrous said. And eventually, one side or the other will eliminate you. That's the reality of this galaxy. He signaled to his surviving warriors, and they retreated to their ship, battered, defeated, but already planning their next move. The Sith were nothing if not patient. Master Avar approached Sentry cautiously, her lightsaber put away but her body language still wary. What you did in there, that was heroic. But it was also terrifying. You wielded power sufficient to crack a planet, and you did it with something that looked almost like joy. It felt good to not hold back, Sentry admitted. To use everything I am without apologizing. That's what the Void has been trying to tell me all along, that power isn't shameful. But Robert Reynolds adds the critical component. Knowing when to stop. He looked at the three Jedi. I'm leaving Len. Going somewhere isolated where I can practice this integration. Learn to be whole instead of fractured. Will you try to stop me? Master Stellan and Avar exchanged glances, their decades of partnership allowing wordless communication. Finally, Stellan spoke, no. We won't stop you. But we will be watching. If you threaten innocence, if the Void takes over, if you become what that ancient being warned about, he let the implication hang. Fair enough, Sentry said. That's all I can ask, a chance to prove I can be better than my worst impulses. As he took off toward the sky, golden contrail marking his departure, Vernestra watched with her unique force perception and saw something the older masters couldn't, destiny threads converging around Sentry in patterns she'd never witnessed. This wasn't the end of his story in the High Republic era. It was barely the beginning. 6 weeks after the events on Len, the galaxy had not forgotten the golden being who existed outside the Force. Reports flooded into the Jedi Temple from across the Outer Rim, sightings of a luminous figure stopping Nihil raids, protecting settlements, then vanishing before authorities could arrive. Some called him the Radiant Guardian. Others whispered of the Void Walker. The Republic's Senate debated whether to classify him as an asset or a threat. And in the shadows, both Jedi and Sith watched with very different intentions. Sentry had found sanctuary on a moon called Elfrona, in a system so remote it appeared on few star charts. The moon had once housed a Jedi outpost, abandoned centuries ago when the sector proved too isolated to justify permanent presence. Ancient meditation chambers carved into cliff faces. Libraries filled with texts on Force philosophy. Training grounds where generations of Padawans had learned to control their abilities. It was perfect. Isolated enough that he couldn't hurt anyone by accident. Rich enough in Jedi history that he could study their methods, even if those methods didn't directly apply to him. And most importantly, quiet enough that Robert Reynolds and the Void could continue their difficult integration without external pressure. He sat now in one of the meditation chambers, legs crossed, hands resting on his knees, attempting something the Jedi texts called internal contemplation. For Force users, this meant examining their connection to the cosmic energy. For Sentry, it meant having a conversation with himself. "We've been doing this for 6 weeks, the Void observed. Its tone was no longer mocking, more like a reluctant partner in an arranged marriage who was slowly discovering common ground. Talking to each other instead of fighting. Negotiating when you need control versus when I need release. And I have to admit, it's working better than I expected. Because we're the same person," Robert Reynolds responded. "When you stop treating me like an enemy trying to suppress you, and I stop treating you like a monster trying to escape, we can actually function. So what's next? We hide here forever. Keep rescuing frontier settlements until the Jedi or Sith decide we're too dangerous and come in force to eliminate us." "I don't know," Robert admitted. "In my universe, I tried everything, joining teams, working solo, even letting myself be imprisoned when I thought I was too dangerous. Nothing worked long-term because I was always fighting you. But here, in this galaxy, maybe we can find a different answer." The meditation was interrupted by a sound he'd learned to recognize: starship engines approaching. Sentry opened his eyes, molecular senses extending to scan the incoming vessel. Not Nihil, their ships had a distinctive chaotic energy signature. Not Jedi either, this ship was too small, too personal. He emerged from the meditation chamber to find a battered freighter settling onto the ancient landing platform. The hatch opened, and a figure descended the ramp, human, middle-aged, wearing the practical clothes of a frontier settler rather than military or religious garb. The woman approached with the careful caution of someone who'd learned to respect danger. "Robert Reynolds," she called out. "The Radiant Guardian." Sentry descended from the cliff face, floating down rather than climbing. "Show of power, but also efficiency. That's what some people call me." "Who are you?" "Marin Kess. I run a settlement on Corellia, small place, mostly refugees from Nihil attacks looking to rebuild. We heard about you. About what you did on Wevo, despite," she hesitated. "Despite what went wrong afterward. We need your help." "With what?" Sentry asked, already wary. Every help request in his universe had eventually turned into a trap, an exploitation, or a disaster. "Marchion Ro," Marin said, and the name carried weight. "The Eye of the Nihil. He's been systematically targeting refugee settlements, places with no military protection, no Jedi oversight. 2 weeks ago, he hit a colony on Dauna. 300 dead. Last week, a farming community on Shurapak. 400 more. He's not even stealing anything valuable, it's pure terror tactics." "The Republic is stretched thin," Marin interrupted. "The Jedi are responding as fast as they can, but Marchion Ro has those hyperspace paths no one else can navigate. He hits and vanishes before help arrives. We're next. I know we're next. His pattern suggests Corellia's outer settlements are on his target list." She met Sentry's eyes with desperate courage. "You can move faster than any ship. You can't be killed by conventional weapons. If anyone can stop him, it's you." "It's a trap," the Void whispered immediately. "Marchion Ro tried to recruit us on Wevo. When we refused, he threatened to make us regret it. This is bait to draw us out." "Probably," Robert agreed. "But that doesn't mean the refugees aren't real. Doesn't mean they don't need help. And if helping them means fighting the entire Nihil fleet. If Marchion Ro has been planning this for weeks, preparing specifically to counter us, then we do what we did on Lan. Work together. Your strength, my restraint. We can protect people without losing control." Sentry looked at Marin Kess, seeing the fear and hope warring in her expression. "When is the attack supposed to happen?" "Our intelligence suggests within 48 hours. Maybe less. Marchion Ro's fleet has been spotted 2 systems away, and his trajectory suggests Corellia." She paused. I know what I'm asking. After Len, after everything that's happened, you probably want to stay hidden. But these are innocent people. Families. Children. They don't have anyone else. Sentry closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility he'd carried for years across 2 universes. In his reality, he'd caused more damage trying to help than many villains caused intentionally. But that was when he'd been fighting himself. When the Void and Robert Reynolds had been locked in constant war. Now they were something else. Something integrated. Maybe that would make the difference. I'll come, he said. But I need you to understand something, I'm dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. If things go wrong, if I lose control, your settlement will need an evacuation plan. Underground shelters. Ships ready to launch. Promise me you'll have those ready. I promise, Marin said, relief flooding her features. Thank you. You're saving lives just by agreeing to. Don't thank me yet, Sentry interrupted. Wait until we see if I can actually protect you without destroying everything in the process. The Nihil fleet arrived at Corellia's outer settlements exactly 36 hours later, just before dawn, the optimal time for terror attacks when defenders were sleepy and disorganized. 20 cloud ships and 3 corvettes, more firepower than any frontier settlement could possibly resist. Marchion Ro stood on the bridge of the Gaze Electric, watching his target through the view screen with the detached interest of a scientist observing an experiment. The settlement below was called New Cormand, 5,000 colonists, mostly refugees from previous attacks. Vulnerable. Afraid. Perfect. Pan Ida rumbled beside him, scouts report no Republic presence. No Jedi. Just the settlers and their primitive defense systems. This will be over in minutes. Good, Marchion said. But maintain full alert. Our real target isn't the settlement. Pan Ida's massive brow furrowed. Then why? Because I'm here, Sentry said. He appeared in the viewport like a golden star, hovering in vacuum between the Nihil fleet and the planet below. His aura cast strange shadows across the flagship's hull, and his voice, transmitted through molecular manipulation of the ship's exterior plates, carried into the bridge as if he were standing among them. Marchion Ro, Sentry continued. I'm giving you one chance. Turn around. Leave these people alone. Find some other way to build your empire that doesn't involve terrorizing refugees. Marchion smiled. There he is. Right on schedule. He activated the fleet-wide all ships, execute contingency radiant. Now. What happened next occurred with the precision of months of planning. The Nihil ships didn't attack Sentry directly. Instead, they scattered, 23 vessels moving in 23 different directions, each heading toward a different settlement across Corellia's surface. Not concentrated assault. Distributed terror. No. Sentry realized the trap instantly. He could stop one ship, maybe even 5. But 23 simultaneous attacks across a planet's surface? He'd have to be in multiple places at once, and even he couldn't do that. Yes you can, the Void whispered. Molecular manipulation. Energy projection. You don't have to be physically present to affect matter. You just have to extend your consciousness, spread your power across distance. I can show you how. That's not possible. The energy requirements would be massive. Would require perfect integration between us. Would push us to limits we've never tested. But it is possible. Trust me. Trust us. Sentry made the decision in microseconds. He closed his eyes, let the Void's instincts guide him, and did something he'd never attempted. He became omnipresent across a limited area. His consciousness fractured, not split like before, not broken, but deliberately distributed. 23 golden manifestations appeared simultaneously above 23 Nihil ships, each one a projection of power connected to his core being like fingers to a hand. The energy expenditure was enormous, reality-breaking, the kind of feat that would have killed any normal enhanced being. But Sentry wasn't normal. And with the void guiding his power while Robert Reynolds maintained focus and purpose, he could accomplish what should have been impossible. Each manifestation reached out. Each one touched a Nihil ship. And through molecular manipulation operating at interplanetary range, each one simply stopped the vessel's engines, not destroying them, not killing crews, but rendering them immobile. 23 ships became 23 floating coffins, life support functional but propulsion dead. On the Gaze Electric's bridge, Marchion Ro watched his carefully planned assault collapse in seconds, and for the first time in his life, the eye of the Nihil felt genuine fear. Impossible, he breathed. No Force user has that range. No technology can. I'm not a Force user, Sentry's voice said, and his primary manifestation appeared directly on the bridge, not teleportation, but molecular phase shifting that let him pass through the hull like it wasn't there. And I'm not using technology. I'm just done holding back. His eyes were gold and black simultaneously, integrated rather than switching. Robert Reynolds and the Void working in perfect harmony, each one tempering the other's excesses. Power with restraint. Strength with purpose. You wanted to know what I'm capable of, Sentry continued, looking at Marchion Ro with something between pity and contempt. You've been testing me since Wevo. Studying me. Trying to figure out my limits so you could exploit them. Here's your answer, I don't have limits you can exploit. I only have choices about how much power to use and when. Pan Ida roared and charged, his massive Daryudan strength enough to dent Dura steel. Sentry caught him with one hand without looking, molecular manipulation locking the warrior in place as if he'd been flash frozen. The Republic will be here in 20 minutes, Sentry said. I sent them your location the moment your fleet entered the system. You can surrender to them, or you can try to fight me. Either way, your attack on New Cormand is over. Your reign of terror ends today. Marchion Ro's hand moved toward a concealed weapon, but froze when Sentry's eyes fixed on him with absolute focus. The eye of the Nihil was many things, brilliant strategist, ruthless tactician, master manipulator. But he wasn't stupid enough to fight an opponent who just demonstrated power beyond any scale he could counter. This isn't over, Marchion said quietly. You've made an enemy today that will haunt you for the rest of your existence in this galaxy. Join the club, Sentry said tiredly. Every universe I visit, someone decides I'm too dangerous to exist or too valuable to ignore. I'm used to it. He paused. But here's what you're not used to, losing. Get comfortable with the feeling. It's going to happen a lot more from now on. He vanished, molecular phase shifting taking him back outside the ship as Republic vessels began emerging from hyperspace. Master Stellan Geos led the Jedi response, 3 cruisers and a dozen fighters, arriving just in time to find the Nihil fleet disabled and helpless. As Sentry watched the Republic forces take Marchion Ro and his raiders into custody, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, satisfaction. Not the Void's hungry satisfaction at demonstrating dominance. Not Robert Reynolds' guilty relief at surviving another crisis without casualties. But genuine, integrated satisfaction at using power effectively to protect innocence. We did it, he thought to himself, to both halves of his fractured being. We actually did it. Saved people without losing control. Without casualties. Without the Void taking over. Because we worked together, the Void responded, and there was something like pride in its tone. This is what we can be when we stop fighting. This is why we have this power. Far below, on New Cormand's surface, Marin Kess watched the golden figure hovering in space and whispered a prayer of gratitude to whatever force had brought such a protector to their galaxy. She didn't know his struggle. Didn't understand the internal war he'd won. Didn't comprehend how close he'd come to losing everything. She just knew that when darkness came, light had risen to meet it. And sometimes, that was enough. 3 months after the Battle of Corellia, as it came to be known in Republic records, Sentry stood once again in the Jedi Council chamber on Coruscant. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Not fear masked as diplomacy. Not strategic assessment disguised as compassion. Something closer to cautious respect. Master Yoda sat forward in his chair, his ancient eyes studying Sentry with the careful attention of someone reassessing a fundamental assumption. Changed, you have, the diminutive master observed. When first you came to this chamber, two beings in conflict I sensed. Now, integration. Balance without the Force. Thought impossible, I did. So did I, Sentry admitted. In my universe, every attempt at integration failed. Therapy, medication, neural suppression, nothing worked because I kept treating the void as an enemy instead of a part of myself. He looked at his hands, where golden light and dark tendrils moved in harmony rather than conflict. Coming to this galaxy, meeting beings who understood power and its consequences, that changed my perspective. Master Avar Kriss stood near the window, her ability to hear the song of the Force, telling her things that couldn't be quantified in reports or debriefings. Since Corellia, you've intervened in 17 Nihil attacks. Rescued 4 Republic outposts. Even cooperated with Jedi strike teams on 3 occasions. She turned to face him. You've become what you claimed you wanted to be, a protector, not a threat. With respect, Master Kriss, he's still a threat, Master Adampo interjected. A controlled threat, yes. An apparently benevolent one. But the power he demonstrated at Corellia, simultaneous manifestations across planetary distances, molecular manipulation of 24 ships, that's beyond anything in our records. If he chose to turn that power against the Republic, he could destroy us, Master Stellan Geos finished. Yes. We're all aware. But he's had dozens of opportunities to do exactly that, and instead he's saved lives. At some point, perpetual suspicion becomes disrespectful. He looked at Sentry directly. You've earned trust through actions. Not complete trust, that would be naive. But enough that we can discuss what comes next without treating you like a prisoner awaiting execution. Vernestra Ro, now a full Jedi Knight despite her youth, spoke from her position near the Council Circle's edge. What do you want, Robert? You've proven yourself to this galaxy. You've integrated the void. You've saved thousands of lives. But you're still operating alone, still isolating yourself on Elphrona between crises. Is that sustainable? Is that what you want long-term? It was the question Sentry had been avoiding for months. What did he want? In his universe, he'd wanted peace, escape from responsibility, from the constant fear of losing control, from the weight of power too vast for one person to bear. He'd run to this galaxy seeking exactly that isolation. But isolation, he'd learned, was just another form of fighting himself. The void grew stronger when Robert Reynolds tried to hide from the world. Integrated, they were strong. Separated by fear and isolation, they fractured. I want to help, Sentry said finally. Not as a Republic asset or a Jedi auxiliary. Not as someone following orders or serving political interests. But as an independent protector who can go where conventional forces can't, do what even Jedi can't accomplish. He paused. I want to be what I was supposed to be in my universe before everything went wrong, a hero. Noble sentiment, Yoda said. But consider, you must, the precedent this sets. A being of immense power, accountable to no government, operating by personal judgment alone. History shows where that path leads, tyranny. Benevolent perhaps, but tyranny nonetheless. Then how do I prove I'm different? Sentry challenged. I've submitted to your monitoring. Cooperated with your forces. Rejected offers from the Sith to join them. What more can I do to demonstrate that I'm choosing to use power responsibly? Continue doing exactly what you're doing, Master Stellan said. Operate independently but transparently. Accept guidance without accepting control. And most importantly, he stood, moving to the center of the circle. Accept help when you need it. The void may be integrated now, but you told us yourself, the integration is fragile. Built on constant negotiation between parts of yourself. What happens if that negotiation fails? What happens in a moment of extreme stress when old patterns reassert themselves? It was a fair question. Sentry had felt the strain during the Corellia battle, the immense concentration required to maintain 23 manifestations while keeping the void's hunger for dominance in check. He'd succeeded, but barely. Another hour of sustained effort might have tipped the balance. I don't know, Sentry admitted. I'd like to say integration is permanent, but I've learned not to make promises I can't keep. The best I can offer is this: if I feel control slipping, if the void starts winning our internal negotiations, I'll remove myself from populated areas. Go back to Elfrona or further into the outer rim where I can't hurt anyone. Not good enough, Vernestra said, surprising everyone. The young Jedi Knight approached Sentry with the fearless determination that had made her a legend despite her age. You can't keep treating relapse as a solo problem. You need support systems. People who can recognize when you're struggling and intervene before it becomes a crisis. She looked at the council. I volunteer. Let me be his contact with the Order. Someone he can reach out to without judgment, who can provide perspective when he's losing his. Absolutely not, Master Adampo said immediately. You're one of our most promising young knights. We're not risking you on. On what? Helping someone who's saved thousands of Republic citizens. On building a bridge between the Jedi and the most powerful being we've ever encountered. Vernestra's voice carried conviction beyond her years. With respect, Master, this is exactly what Jedi should do. Not isolate Force-adjacent beings out of fear, but help them find their place in the cosmic balance. Yoda was silent for a long moment, his ears twitching with thought. Finally, he spoke, wisdom in young Vernestra's words, there is. Isolation created the problem. Community may sustain the solution. He looked at Sentry. Accept you, as independent ally of the Republic and the Jedi Order, we will. Not citizen, not soldier, but something new, protector unbound. Free to act according to conscience, with understanding that egregious violations of Republic law will be addressed. But until such violations occur, trusted you will be. It's a risk, Master Adampo muttered. A tremendous risk. All trust is risk, Avar countered. But trust is also how we build something better than fear and containment. Robert Reynolds came to this galaxy seeking peace. The least we can do is help him find it, rather than becoming another universe that tried to cage him. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous, several masters abstained, concerned about precedent and liability. But the majority sided with integration over isolation, trust over imprisonment. As Sentry left the council chamber, Vernestra walked beside him through the temple's serene corridors. You know this doesn't mean everything's perfect, right? She said. There will be politicians who fear you. Citizens who think you're too dangerous. Even Jedi who question whether the council made the right decision. I know, Sentry said. Story of my life. But this is the first time anyone's given me trust without demanding control in exchange. That means something. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape. Trillions of lives spread out before them, all of them fragile, all of them counting on being stronger than themselves to protect rather than exploit. Can I ask you something personal? Vernestra said. The Radiant One, on Lan. The being that destroyed the Rakata Empire. It said you were young, that you hadn't been hurt enough yet to understand its philosophy. Do you think it was right? That given enough time and suffering, you'll become what it became? Sentry considered the question carefully. In his universe, he'd asked himself the same thing countless times. Whether the Void's eventual victory was inevitable, just a matter of when rather than if. Maybe, he said honestly. I can't promise I'll never fall. Can't guarantee the Void won't win someday. But I can promise this, every day I choose to be better than my worst impulses is a day the galaxy stays safe. And as long as I keep choosing that, as long as people like you remind me why it matters, he looked at Vernestra with something like hope. Then maybe I can prove the Radiant One wrong. Maybe beings like us aren't doomed to become monsters. Maybe we just need the right support to stay heroes. Far above Coruscant, in the space between stars, a dimensional tear flickered, barely perceptible, just a hairline fracture in reality where Sentry had entered this universe months ago. It was healing, slowly, the galaxy's natural laws reasserting themselves. But it wasn't gone. And through that crack, something watched with interest. Something that recognized Sentry's energy signature. Something that had been searching across infinite realities for beings like the Radiant One. In Sentry's universe, there were heroes and villains who understood what he was. Reed Richards had studied him. The Avengers had fought beside him. Even Galactus, the World Eater, had taken notice of the Golden Man who exists between moments. Now, one of those entities had found the crack. Had traced Sentry's path to this new galaxy. And was preparing to follow, drawn by curiosity, hunger, or perhaps something more complex. The void stirred in Sentry's mind, sensing danger it couldn't name. Something's wrong. I feel watched. Like we're not alone anymore. What do you mean? Robert asked. We're on Coruscant. There are trillions of. Not that kind of watching. Something from home. Something that knows what we are. The void's presence shuddered. Something's coming through the crack we made. Something that makes the Radiant One look weak. Sentry's blood ran cold. In his universe, there were beings who made gods tremble. Cosmic entities whose power dwarfed even his reality-warping abilities. If one of them had followed him here, if they'd found the path between universes. Vernestra, he said urgently. We need to talk to the Council. Right now. Something's wrong. Something's. The dimensional tear above Coruscant suddenly widened, reality screaming as something massive pushed through from the other side. Alarms wailed across the planet as sensors detected an energy signature that broke every scale. Through the crack came something that looked almost human, but wrong, too perfect, too symmetrical, radiating power that made Sentry's abilities look quaint by comparison. It wore armor that seemed to be woven from collapsed stars, and its eyes held the cold intelligence of something that had watched civilizations rise and fall across countless realities. Sentry recognized it immediately. In his universe, this being was called the Timebreaker, an entity that hunted reality warpers, believing them to be tumors in the fabric of existence that needed to be excised. It had tried to kill Sentry twice. He'd barely escaped both times. And now it was here, in this galaxy, drawn by the same dimensional tear that had brought him. The Timebreaker's voice resonated across Coruscant, heard by every force sensitive and felt by every living being as a pressure in their minds. Robert Reynolds. Designated Anomaly Designation, Sentry. You have violated dimensional quarantine by entering a restricted reality. Surrender for termination, or this entire galaxy will be sterilized to prevent contamination. Sentry looked at Vernestra, at the terror in her young face, and felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders like a physical force. He'd brought this here. His escape had opened a door between universes. And now the thing hunting him had followed, threatening an entire galaxy because one man had wanted peace. Get everyone to shelters, he said, his voice carrying both Robert Reynolds' desperate determination and the void's cold calculation. Evacuate the Senate District. This thing, it's from my universe, and it's here to kill me. If I don't stop it. Then we stop it together, Vernestra said, igniting her purple lightsaber with trembling hands. That's what allies do. Sentry looked at her, this brave, foolish young Jedi who'd just offered trust and now stood ready to die beside him, and felt something shift in his integrated psyche. Not fracture. Not conflict. But crystalline clarity. He wasn't alone anymore. wasn't just one man fighting himself across infinite realities. He had allies now. A galaxy that had chosen to trust rather than imprison him. And he'd be damned if he let the Timebreaker destroy that trust just to eliminate one anomaly. "Okay," he said, golden dark aura blazing to full power. "But stay back. This is going to make Lan look gentle." He rose toward the sky, toward the massive entity hovering above Coruscant like a sword of Damocles, and prepared for the fight that would determine whether his presence in this galaxy was salvation or extinction. The High Republic's golden age was about to face a threat from beyond their reality. And the only defense they had was a man who'd come seeking peace but brought war. Sometimes, the universe had a cruel sense of irony. The battle between Sentry and the Timebreaker lasted 3 days and reshaped the High Republic's understanding of what was possible. Coruscant's shields held, barely, as two beings from beyond the Force clashed with power that made orbital bombardments look gentle. The Jedi Council watched helplessly as their carefully ordered reality cracked at the edges, admitting possibilities they'd never imagined. In the end, Sentry didn't defeat the Timebreaker through superior strength. He won through integration, using Robert Reynolds' tactical thinking combined with the Void's raw power to manipulate the dimensional tear itself, collapsing it from inside and trapping the entity between realities where it could harm neither universe. But the victory came at a cost. The effort of closing the dimensional breach burned through Sentry's power reserves in ways he'd never experienced. For weeks afterward, he was vulnerable, still superhuman, but no longer the godlike being who could manifest across planetary distances. His integration with the Void held, but became fragile, requiring constant attention to maintain. The Republic, faced with undeniable evidence that threats existed beyond their comprehension, adapted. They didn't attempt to control Sentry, but neither did they grant him unlimited freedom. A compromise was reached. He would operate as an independent protector, with Marchion Ro as his liaison to the Jedi Order, empowered to call for his assistance in crises beyond conventional response. Marchion Ro, imprisoned after Corellia, watched these developments from his cell with calculating patience. The Nihil leader understood that Sentry's vulnerability period wouldn't last forever. And when the Golden Protector recovered his full strength, when the galaxy grew complacent with his presence, that's when the Eye would make his move. In the shadows even deeper than the Nihil, Darth Tenebrous returned to his hidden sanctum with knowledge worth more than any temporary alliance. He'd learned that power existed outside the Force. That beings could transcend the light-dark dichotomy. And most importantly, that the dimensional barriers between realities were not as permanent as anyone believed. The Sith had waited centuries for their revenge against the Jedi. They could wait a little longer to explore what lay beyond this universe, realities where power took forms the Force had never imagined. And Sentry, recovering on the abandoned moon of Elphrona, sat in meditation and contemplated an uncomfortable truth. He'd saved this galaxy from the Timebreaker, but in doing so, he'd proven the Radiant One's warning prescient. He was a bridge between realities, and bridges allowed traffic in both directions. More would come. More entities drawn by the dimensional scar his arrival had created. More threats from beyond the Force, challenging everything this galaxy understood about power and reality. But he wouldn't face them alone. Vernestra visited weekly, bringing news and friendship. Other Jedi reached out, curious about this being who existed outside their cosmic framework. Even a few senators, pragmatic enough to value results over fear, extended tentative cooperation. The High Republic had accepted the Golden Contradiction into their society. Not as weapon or prisoner, but as something unprecedented, a protector from beyond the stars, carrying within himself both the power to save worlds and the darkness to destroy them. Whether that acceptance would be remembered as wisdom or folly, only time would tell. But for now, in this moment of fragile peace, Robert Reynolds and the Void existed in harmony. Two halves of one being, finally learning to work together rather than fight for dominance. And somewhere in the space between realities, the Radiant One watched and wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, it had been wrong. Maybe beings like them weren't doomed to become monsters. Maybe they just needed the right galaxy to grow into heroes.